front of our library studio yesterday, tens of thousands of runners triumphantly crossed the Boston Marathon finish line. 2 Kenyans took home crowns for the men's and women's races, 34-year-old Evans Chebet and 33-year-old Helen Obiri. For the full picture and other sports headlines, we'll talk with NBC Sports Boston's Trenny Casey. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Rival generals in Sudan appear to have agreed to a 24-hour ceasefire. Fighting in the country erupted 4 days ago, killing and injuring hundreds of people. NPR's Aya Batrawi reports the ceasefire is due to start next hour.
Sudan's armed forces initially rejected a public announcement of a 24-hour ceasefire by the Rapid Support Forces known as RSF. Sudan's military command accused the RSF of calling for a cessation of fighting in order to allow a military cargo flight from another country to land in the northern city of Marwa. The allegation underscores growing concerns the fighting in Sudan could be drawing in other countries in the region. Sudan's armed forces later confirmed to NPR in a statement that it had agreed to the 24-hour ceasefire, which it says was partially brokered by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Blinken says the RSF was likely behind an attack on a U.S. Embassy convoy Monday. No one was injured. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
The Food and Drug Administration has authorized the latest COVID-19 vaccines for use as yet another booster for some people. NPR's Rob Stein has the story.
The FDA has decided to let anyone age 65 and older who got one of the bivalent Omicron boosters at least 4 months ago to get another one. Same goes for anyone with a weakened immune system who got one of the shots at least 2 months ago. Until now, the newest formulations of the vaccines could only be used for one booster. But concerns about fading immunity prompted the agency to okay another for those at highest risk. It's unclear how many people want another booster, but the decision is welcomed by those who are still worried about COVID and also frustrating others younger than 65 who would also like to bolster their immunity. Rob Stein, NPR News.
Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis has asked the state legislature to revoke development agreements between Disney and the municipal district in which it operates. From member station WMFE, Danielle Pryor reports the move is the latest in a power struggle between DeSantis and Disney.
If the development agreements are revoked, it would give the new DeSantis-appointed Central Florida Tourism Oversight District Board the ability to develop the land around the theme parks and within the cities of Lake Buena Vista and Bay Lake as it sees fit. DeSantis quipped that the land could be turned into almost anything.
People have said, maybe have maybe create a state park, maybe try to do more amusement parks. Someone even said, maybe you need another state prison. Who knows? I just think that the possibilities are endless.
The legislation would also revoke state inspection exemptions for Disney's parks, including for its iconic monorail. For NPR News, I'm Danielle Pryor in Orlando.
On Wall Street, stocks are lower. The Dow is down 125 points. It's NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. 19 elected officials and leaders serving the city of Salem came together last week to issue a statement in support of the LGBTQ plus community. The move followed a hate crime a week earlier in which 2 youth mentors were targeted for their perceived sexuality. 4 suspects in the incident, all teenage males, 2 of them minors, have already been charged or will be summoned on charges of assault to intimidate and a civil rights violation. The state officials issued by the Salem group included Congressman Seth Moulton, and it said in part, "We, the undersigned community, leaders of Salem, Massachusetts, want our LGBTQ plus youth and adults to know that we stand with you. We are aware of the recent uptick in violence and anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, and we want you to know that you are not alone." Unquote. South Coast Rail is warning people to stay off the tracks. Passenger trains haven't traveled the South Coast for decades, and people often walk those tracks, according to the Herald. But that's now illegal, with commuter rail coming to Fall River later this year. Before those trains take people to Boston, the T will test those trains before the end of spring, so please don't walk the tracks along the South Coast. Celtics and Hawks have Game 2 of their NBA playoff series tonight. Celtics lead 1-0. Red Sox host the Twins at Fenway. Nice night in the ball yard tonight. Mostly sunny, 60 today. It is 54 right now. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include iDrive with Remote PC, providing remote access to PCs, Macs, and servers from anywhere. Designed to assist those working from home. More at remotepc.com.
I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Welcome to Boylston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Jared Bowen is sitting in for Marjorie Egan yet again today. She's off for a couple of days. He's the executive arts editor of GBH. Hello there, Jared. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Very nice to see you. We're streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. The walk-up apartment above, a restaurant, a coffee shop is a staple of city living. Multifamily units in multi-use buildings. The same model might be coming to a Boston Public Library branch near you. Joining us now to discuss a proposal from the city to add affordable housing to branches of the BPL is our host, noted marathoner and president of the Boston Public Library. Well, he'd like to be anyway. David Leonard. How are you, David?
Jim, good to be with you. Hey,
nice
Jared.
to see you.
Watching the runners would be my marathoning experience.
That's what I meant,
okay,
actually. I meant
just wanted to clarify that.
I was trying to save time.
That counts too. Well, this sounds like a really lovely idea. First of all, if you have an apartment above a library, you have a little fire, maybe image of a fire upstairs, run down, grab a book, go upstairs and have some hot chocolate. But I'm kind of joking, but it's lovely. But it's also a very practical idea for cities, and we know that New York has looked into this, Chicago, now Boston. What's the genesis of this idea?
So the idea here in Boston goes back to an initiative during the Walsh administration, where we were challenged to look at helping to solve some of Boston's housing crisis by taking civic assets and exploring whether it was possible to solve two problems at once. A new library in our case, plus housing above it. But they were also looking at some parking lots and I think fire stations as well. But now we're seeing 3 library projects actually moving forward at this point. And we'll be considering that in other places.
Which ones
too.
are we talking about?
So, and you've been hearing about 1 or 2 for a while. So Chinatown, which hasn't had its own dedicated branch since the 1950s, that will have a new development. AC/DC is the awarded developer there, and we're working very closely with them to try and get it to the next stage of approval. I think more recently, the Globe and then you covered the West End project, which would be on the existing site. And the RFP there has gone out from our amazing colleagues at the Mayor's Office of Housing, who have been really the real champion. We're just a supporting character in some ways. They're the real champion of this initiative and have been for several years.
Well, in all fairness, you've been talking about it for years and years and years too, David Leonard.
Sheila Dillon and I have both been talking about this
the chief of housing for the city.
For many years.
The term that I hadn't heard before, co-location, I guess is what this is called. Why is this good for both for housing advocates and for those who care about well-maintained, fully funded libraries?
Sure. I think, certainly no one would argue that housing is one of the biggest challenges in the city. And one way to help with that is bring more affordable housing into the mixture. So it's taking a piece of property and what is great for us is we will get a new library out of the process. Upham's Corner was the third one. That's been something that I've been aware of that community's been advocating for since at least 2011, if not before.
It seems to me also, as I don't do what you do, obviously, but I love this place, and it seems to me that it also creates a sort of a built-in sense of community in new housing and safety that goes with it and all that sort of stuff. No?
Right. I mean, I think. Look at the synergy between, say, having a large central library with a radio broadcast studio inside it. You know, that's an example
and
of mixed use as well, and a cafe.
Yeah.
Are great partners with the Quai de Fer here on Boylston Street. So there are many examples of mixed use, maybe not just on this scale before, other than the New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., who have all done versions of this.
You just mentioned that you would get a library out of it. And I was wondering, so yes, we've been talking about that and what this can do for affordable housing, but what kind of resources does it inject into a library or to the library system?
So because it's very important that the housing that comes online be a variety of affordable, we are still looking to the City of Boston to fund the capital part, the renovation part of the library, if you will. And so both under now multiple administrations, we've had that commitment there for the sites I'm talking about. In fact, Mayor Wu, who just released the budget, her budget for the City of Boston last week, has now committed to, both on the operating and capital, what I believe is the largest commitment to libraries in over a decade.
Really?
So it's not
That's
like
huge.
you perhaps bring in a developer who then injects something, a fusion into the public space.
I mean, we're in dialogue with what the right mix of that funding is, but if we're not going to do luxury apartments, there isn't as much money on the table to do that. And that's not what we feel as a city would be most beneficial to our communities at the moment.
We're talking to our host, the president of the Boston Public Library, David Leonard, about this collaboration with the city to build affordable housing at least several sites. You may not want to speak to this, but it seems to me strategically there's also great value for housing advocates to join with the library, because there's almost not a housing project where we don't have one of these NIMBY things. I totally support affordable housing, just not here. It should be in their neighborhood, somebody else's. Almost nobody, I assume, opposes a rehabbed, improved, or brand new library. So having you be the lead seems to me to be a great advantage to try to circumvent some of the unfortunately typical neighborhood opposition, no?
I think the merits of having a renovated library, whether it's standalone or as part of a larger development, are very clear to communities that might not be at the stage that they would be at in our grander renovation plans. But at the same time, this is not right for every single neighborhood. We've had 2 of our programming studies so far that we have looked at and decided it was, in dialogue with the community, it was not the right thing to move forward. In the case of Fields Corner, the site itself is too tight. So you couldn't really make the finances work in a way that could deliver the type of library they want and ensure that all of that housing would be some form of affordable. So that's one example. The other example was Eggleston Square, where the community was saying loudly, look, we really want a new library, and God, that one deserves to be renovated soon. But we also value our green space, and the site would be a better use to have maybe even programmable outdoor space in combination with that. And there are other housing initiatives in the immediate vicinity. So those are 2 really good reasons why, in those cases, it was not the right thing to do, but it was absolutely the right thing for us to put it on the table as an option.
Sometimes it's good to not be number 1. In this case, I think you just mentioned you'd be number 4 after, again, New York, Chicago, D.C. So as you looked at other cities that have done this, are there fundamental things you've learned about doing this?
I think they work well when separate front doors for each component, so you're not getting in each other's way, basically, but at the same time be close enough so that there is mutual benefit to both parties. The ideal contractual way to structure this appears to be to think of the library as a condo within the overall development, at least from an operating point of view, if not from a full-on land ownership point of view. And so I think there are some lessons learned around that. We love being first in Boston for many, many things, including marathon and the library and the school. But in this case, we can certainly benefit from learning from our colleagues across the country.
If I can state the obvious for just a sec, your notion about, making 2 things better than they'd be by themselves, sort of analogous. I think it's the best radio studio in America. I'm serious, because we're in the library, because of the news feed cafe. It's so obvious that when you combine desirable things, you make the sum is better than the parts even kind of thing. So I love this idea. I mean, both for those who love libraries, which I assume is virtually everybody, and for those who acknowledge that affordable housing is a great need in this community, which is also almost everybody.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing an emergence over the last 10 years in the library profession about valuing the role of our civic spaces more.
Yeah.
And so this is just one more way where we're adjacent to different types of civic infrastructure, whether it's a community center, a radio station, or now housing.
Okay, before you go, is this going to happen, or is this just wonderful talk that we're going to look back on in 10 years and say, why did it fall apart?
So Chinatown has been awarded to a developer, so that's been approved by the BPDA. The Uplands Corner project was also just awarded last Thursday to the developer that the community helped select. Which is another important piece of this process. And when the charrette version of the West End one was done several years ago, there were multiple developers interested in that. And so, the first two feel really definite, and I'm very optimistic about the third. And then we will look where it makes sense at future projects as well.
Really exciting. Really, really exciting. David, it's nice to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you both.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you. We have been speaking with David
Really
Leonard,
great.
president of the Boston Public Library. And up next, we'll ask you to put the IRS on hold for the moment and answer a very important question. Do you cheat on your taxes? The number is 877-301-8970. Stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
GBH's All Things Considered with Arun Roth.
It is really hard to understate the importance of local news.
Trusted local news with NPR.
There's no substitute for an actual trained reporter in their community, plugged in, knowing their local sheriff, knowing the local mayor, knowing the local dog catcher, everything.
Weekdays from 4 to 7 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, a health plan connected to a world-leading healthcare system, committed to providing innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Margery. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, it is tax day, and if you're a regular listener to the show, you know what that means. We're asking you to put the IRS on hold and tell us about all the ways you lie and cheat on your taxes. Let me put it more politely. Do you cheat on your taxes? If you say no, are you telling the truth? And if you really don't cheat on your taxes, would you cheat if you thought you could get away with it? Give us a buzz or a text, 877-301-8970. And you also, if you want to explain to us why 25% of you wait till the absolute last minute, sort of like a senior submitting your final paper in college, why do you do that? Why do you wait to the last minute to do this? 877-301-8970. So let's start with Jared Bowen.
Oh, boy.
You cheated on your taxes,
I'm here
Jared?
now. Did you realize he said...
I said Margery again?
Jim Browdy and Margery.
I did?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know why I said that? Because if Margery were here, we weren't doing this. Every time I bring this up every year, Margery says, not again. We're not going to do that. Yes, we are, Margery. You're not here. Jared Bowen is. Hi, Jared. How are you?
I'm well.
Do you cheat on your taxes?
I do not cheat on my taxes.
Raise your right hand. Do you cheat on your taxes?
I do not cheat on my taxes.
Why do you not cheat?
You know me. I do not enjoy stress. So everything is about a risk evaluation. Do I really want to cheat on my taxes and then find myself in some government office having to account for 17 years of expenses and everything else? No, I don't want to do that. So I'm happy to just pay them and have my trash picked up.
You're the perfect person to ask. And then the follow-up question, if you were convinced by a higher power that there was no risk, that there is zero chance you'd be caught if you did cheat. By the way, only 6% of Americans admit they cheat, which is total BS. In light of the fact the Congressional Budget Office, I think it was, says we lose $1 trillion a year in unpaid taxes. That's a sixth of the whole damn budget. $1 trillion is more than 6% cheaters. If you were convinced you would get away with it, You're nodding. You do it.
No, I will. Of course I would.
Why?
Because I believe that our tax money goes to, obviously it's not all spent well, but I believe the majority of it is spent well. And again, I would like my trash picked up.
This is so untrue.
Thank you very much. It is totally true.
You've never cheated.
Look, I'm not turning bright red, am I?
You've never cheated. You
No.
are turning bright red, actually. Have you ever cheated on your taxes ever?
No.
I don't believe that.
I'm not smart enough to cheat on my taxes.
Well,
Let's just
actually-
say that. I'm not very good with numbers.
877-301-8970.
Do I get to turn the tables now?
Of course you can.
Okay, Jim Browdy, have you ever cheated on your taxes?
Absolutely not.
You're such a liar.
No, absolutely not. But I have been audited, and I have to say, this gets back to your stress thing. I was audited twice, I'd say about 20 plus years ago, 2 years in a row. It is literally like being waterboarded. It is about as horrible and I was making no money at the time, so I have no idea why I was audited. I don't know what it was about. It is as painful a process. And by the way, I got what's called no change. No change means they affirm that what you did on your filing was legit. And there was, as a result, no change. 877-301-8970. Do you wait till the last minute to file?
No.
Oh, so you're doing all good things. And that's because you're like a neat little non-stress little guy, right? Is that what it is?
Why would I want to bring that unnecessary stress
to your life? So is it all about stress?
A lot of it is, yeah.
It is, yeah.
You have to evaluate. What is this? What are the consequences of this? Can I avoid it? Then yes, let's get it over and done with.
Do you get an extension?
No.
I've had an extension every year for like 30 years. And by the way, you're supposed to say when you say you get an extension, if you do get an extension, which you can have till October, you do have to pay along with the extension whatever you believe you're going to end up owing in taxes. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Well, I'm telling you right now.
Because I didn't need to know that.
Because you don't get an extension.
Have you filed your taxes?
I've not. I've gotten an extension. It's perfectly legal. There's nothing. What are you laughing about? There's nothing wrong with that.
Because the audience is laughing.
No,
I'm laughing with them.
Please stop laughing, if you would. Thank you. I'm talking to you right there. Thank you very much.
We're laughing with you, Jim.
877. How many people in the audience? We should have asked them. How many of you have cheated on your taxes in, let's say, the last 5 years? Raise your hand. Two honest people in the whole damn crowd. Could you do me a favor, Jamie? Could you go out to those two women and ask them why? We're not going to identify them. Can you raise your hands again so Jamie you can see who you are? The woman in red and now the woman in the green and whatever. Raise your hand higher. You did it once. You could do it again. Jamie, our colleague, is going to find out without naming names. Maybe we'll just use your social security number and find out why it is those two people were honest. How many of you, excuse me, how many of you were lying when you didn't raise your hand? That's everybody. Thank you very much.
One hand went. Of course, you're safe in a government building. The IRS is not at all watching you in a government building as we ask these questions.
You know, ordinarily when we do this, we're going to get to your calls and texts in a second. Ordinarily when we do this, people say that if they do cheat, it's not because they're dishonorable people, but they basically feel it's an obligation, and I'm quoting them, to sort of stick it to the man kind of thing. You know, they're upset with the government, whatever it is. They don't like the way their money is spent and that sort of thing, so they feel it's an opportunity to make a statement.
The recycling didn't get picked up.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know.
The lights in the lamppost didn't get changed.
I don't cheat. And you know, the other thing, it's a value. Good for the Democrats. I don't know if you're aware, last year, I think it was, they did $80 billion of additional money over 10 years to the IRS so they can hire additional people to answer the damn phone. Did you know that 2 years ago, 9 out of 10 calls to the IRS were never returned or picked up by the IRS by real people? They hired 5,000 to 7,000 more people to answer phones, so that's helped. And the second thing is they've hired auditors because the vast majority of the $1 trillion in unpaid taxes that allegedly happens every single year is wealthy taxpayers and large corporations, where you need people, auditors, who are really skillful to be able to do that kind of auditing.
They did basically come out and say you can cheat because these new auditors will only go after people who have hundreds, you know, who make, I think, more than $400,000. So they're really looking at what they consider very wealthy people. So,
do you want to read Jamie's notes? He spoke to the two women who were honest enough to say they cheated on their taxes. Do you want to read what they said?
The note says, the first person says she did it because I could. The other person said she's already served time for it and doesn't want to talk about it.
877-301-8970. Let's start in Somerville with Susan. Susan, you're on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for calling. Hi.
Hi, Susan.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So I called right away because my first thought is, we mean cheating like Justice Clarence Thomas? Do we mean omission? That's number one. Number two, if you're a personal contractor, you can take a third of your one bedroom for deductibles. There's all kinds of definitions, I guess, of omission and cheating. And I think we have such an awful example in Clarence Thomas that it's going to just throw everybody into a fit. And then my second point, I guess, is I don't think our taxes go to the right place, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to make interpretations about the tax law.
So you didn't answer the question, though. That is pretty obvious. You do not pay your full share. Is that a fair statement?
I don't think that's a fair statement. No, I think it's open to interpretation.
Say that again. It's open to interpretation. Well, I think that is the answer.
I do think it's open.
Oh, I hear you.
So. It's open to interpretation.
Susan, thank you for your call. By the way, I want to correct one thing Susan said. The ability to deduct a home office, or at least she says a third of the cost of a home office, has almost disappeared under IRS regulations. So be really careful about that. She raises a really good point, though. Maybe this one, Clarence Thomas's response to every corrupt act he has taken about taking money or non-disclosure in the last several weeks. There have been 3 instances that I'm aware of. Is I didn't know what the rules were. I'm going to amend my filings after the fact. Why is that not a credible defense for a taxpayer? I didn't understand if the Supreme Court justice doesn't understand what the law is about disclosure. Well, I don't understand the tax code's 42,000 pages or whatever it is. I didn't understand my obligation, so I'm going to amend now that you caught me, I'm going to amend my disclosure. I'm serious.
I know you're serious, and I think it's very plausible. Likewise, I think a lot of people found merit in what Donald Trump said about his taxes, and they thought, well, if he's going to treat it this way, then so I will too. You know what's also incredible? I'm so glad you brought him up. When the New York Times got his tax returns, we think from his niece, Mary Trump. I'm not sure if that ever was made public. I think the assumption was because of litigation Mary Trump had against him about cheating her father out of his share of the estate of Trump's father, who was Trump's brother. It's clear he avoided hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. And do you think he lost one vote because of his tax avoidance? Do you think one vote from normal people, most of whom do play by the rules? I think he inspired people. He said, I'm smarter than that.
He did say that.
Not unlike Leona Helmsley.
He did say it. Explain who she was and what she said.
Leona Helmsley, the queen of mean, who said that the wealthy people, I can't remember the exact quote, wealthy people...
Only little people pay taxes. She was a hotel empire person.
And then she went to jail for it.
And she left all of her estate to whom?
Her dog.
Her poodle. Correct. Kevin in the car, you are next on Boston Public Radio on Tax Day. Hey there, Kevin. How are you?
Good afternoon, you two.
Hey.
How are you guys?
Good.
So here's the peril of not paying or cheating on your taxes. I was self-employed all my life. And as such, I availed myself of various generous tax code options. Subsequently, late in life, I became disabled in a wheelchair. Okay. And when they determine what your SSDI disability insurance is, they base it off of your income. So my monthly disability is significantly less than what my actual income was. So it's a double-edged sword. So, you can't really complain about the back end when you take advantage of the front end, but there are repercussions.
Hey, Kevin, thank you very much for your call. Here's Anonymous from somewhere. I have no patience, so I just write whatever my best guesstimate is, and I hope it's right. If they audit me, I'm ready to hop on a train and start my life as a drifter. Well, that's a constructive approach to this kind of thing. 877-301-8970 is the number.
How about this one? No name in no town writes, I do cheat on my taxes, but not as much as I could, and I filed last minute this year because I expected to pay this year. Surprise, I get a refund, so I changed my answers to get a smaller refund.
Well, a lot of tax people, not the incredibly honorable person who I use, but people I've used in the past earlier in my life, will tell you what are the categories of deductions that you're most likely to get audited if a number seems excessive. And what they're basically telling you, without giving you direct advice, is that's the area in which you can fudge the numbers and probably get away with it, which is, a little troubling. 877-301-8970 is the number. Where do you want to go?
Let's go to Phil calling. We're not sure where you're calling from, Phil.
Hey, Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
I think it's okay. How about with you?
Good. Yeah, I live in Pepperell, but right now I'm in the car in Lynn.
It's fabulous. That's excellent to hear. What's up, Phil?
Well, Jared was talking about people getting audited. What did you say, 430,000 or something they focused in on?
They're looking at, above 400,000.
Income.
Well, that's not true, or they don't like traveling salesmen or merchandisers or whatever, because I've been audited at least 3 times, usually on mileage claims for work, etc. And Jim's right, it's very awful and mind-numbing, and they're never cooperative, and you better pay the results they come up with as well, because they won't leave you alone.
What did you get that? What the gist of this is?
That he's been audited a number of times, and it's as you said, it's a very arduous process.
It is
and
arduous.
They won't leave him alone.
Well, that's horrible, Phil. We're sorry to hear that. Thank you very much for the call.
Just to clarify, Phil, it's not like they won't audit anybody who's making below $400,000. However, they're saying as they add to their employee base, they're saying the focus they're doing this so the focus can be on higher income earners.
Which is where the major tax cheating is, according to these sources. Here's somebody who texted, did you hear the joke about the man who cheated on his taxes, felt so guilty that he couldn't sleep for years? He finally sent a check to the IRS for $1,000. He said, if I still can't sleep, I'll pay the rest. So thank you very much. Lauren in Worcester, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about tax day and one's approach to it. Hi there, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Jim. Hi there.
Hi, Jared.
So, frankly, I wouldn't even know how to cheat on my taxes.
Well,
I
that's
use
good.
TurboTax,
Yeah.
and there aren't a lot of places for wiggle room that I can tell. Maybe if there were, I would, but...
What are you looking for advice, Lauren? Are you looking for advice?
I was going to say, Jim might be able to help you with this.
Well, wait a second. Lauren, again, I am not, let me be clear, I'm not advocating for anything except honor and honesty. But when they say to you, how much did you spend on X as the deduction? I mean, you can say X, and if you choose to be dishonorable, you can say 2 times X, right?
Yeah, I guess maybe because I get the standard deduction, I don't really have that wiggle room.
Well, that's a good point.
I don't make enough money.
That limits your options. And by the way, it's very hard to lie about your income unless you're loaded, because most of us have all of our income reported by employers. So are you calling to make that point, or are you calling to say you're really sad that you can't figure out an opportunity to bend the rules?
Extremely bummed.
Thank you for your honesty, Lauren. Keep listening. Maybe we can give you a little guidance here. 877-301-8970. What?
Do you think the IRS is really happy about that film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, with Jamie Lee Curtis playing the IRS agent?
That's a fine point, actually. That is that won all the Academy Awards.
And she won. Yeah, she won for playing an IRS agent. And showed you how horrible that auditing process would be.
So do you buy the notion that only 6%, the most recent poll, 94% said they never cheat on their taxes? Do you buy the notion that only 6% of people do cheat on their taxes?
Well, if our representation here at the library is
well, they're not telling the truth. I mean, and also they're here, so we can identify. I mean, we see them. This is more of an anonymous kind of thing.
The retina scans are happening right now for the people who raise their hands.
That's probably true. 877-301-8970. By the way, if it is only 6%, it's sort of heartening, because so many people are so angry at government either not doing enough or doing too much. The fact that the vast majority of people see it as their responsibility or are worried about getting caught, sort of like you, even though you said that's not the motivation, that's actually a healthy kind of thing, don't you think?
I do.
Where do you want to go?
Ron from Chestnut Hill wonders if I was ever a Boy Scout. I was a Boy Scout for about a week, and then I realized this is not for me.
You know what's amazing? Who are we talking to? Marjorie was a Girl Scout, or whatever, and was it Sue who made it to it was Sue O'Connell, who made it to the equivalent of whatever the Eagle thing is.
Eagle Scout.
For girls, it's not called
It's
Eagle.
not Eagle Thing in Boy Scouts, it's Eagle Scout.
Well, whatever, but what's it called for girls?
I don't know.
Good, thank you for your help.
We'll find that out.
Colleen in Norwich? Wherever that is. Who? Norwood. Hello, Colleen, how are you? What's your deal?
Hi, Colleen.
I'm doing well. I'm just calling because I'm a public school teacher. My husband's a public school principal. We have 2 sons, active duty military, a teenage daughter, and we always have to pay taxes. And
Yeah.
it's just infuriating that people like Elon Musk and all these billionaires that people like Elon Musk and all these billionaires can find tax loops, and we're paying every single year thousands of dollars. It just seems ridiculous.
Well, I'm so glad you called, Colleen, and thank you for your call, and thanks for you and your husband do. I should have said this earlier. I assume that those who cheat felt I don't have the kinds of accountants and skills provided to me to do what forget Elon Musk, what Jeff Bezos has done repeatedly, Amazon paying nothing for years in taxes despite billions in profits. And there is a great inequity, which is one of the things I think the Democrats tried to fix with this $80 billion over 10 years to improve, among other things, auditing. But it is aggravating when you hear, as stated as a fact, that the vast majority of cheating is done by people and businesses at the top. You sort of feel like there's an inequity there,
Or sometimes there isn't even cheating. Remember when Warren Buffett famously came out and called out the fact that his secretary was paying at a higher income tax bracket than he was.
Yeah.
And he was doing everything rightly, and still, despite having all of that money, his secretary is paying more proportionately.
877-301-8970. We're talking on tax day about bending the rules with your tax returns. Where do you want to go there?
Let's go to Catherine calling from Wareham.
Hey,
Hi,
Catherine. Hi.
Hi. I was thinking about the fact that I am honest when I pay my taxes, but I tip in cash and I pay my contractors in cash when I can. And I wonder if that's sort of like cheating on taxes because I'm helping them. If they don't want to have to declare it, they don't have to.
Well, let's ask Goody Two Shoes over here, Jared Bowen. She is not cheating, but, by the way, you may be cheating by not reporting what you're paying them. I think over $600 or something you have an obligation. But let's assume you don't. She's facilitating their ability to not pay what they're required to pay, is what Catherine's saying. Is that cheating?
I am going to channel Justice Thomas here and say, I don't know.
So, Catherine, do you feel guilt-ridden about it or not?
I don't. I think that there are some people who have to pay lots of taxes and they get hit really hard. And if they're in a position where they don't want to declare certain things, that's on them.
Well, that's right. Wasn't there a Supreme Court nominee? Was it Bill Clinton's nominee? Was it Zoe Baird? I can't remember. Was that her name? I think there was a Supreme Court nominee who ultimately had to be withdrawn, and I think by Bill Clinton, one of our colleagues will check, because of a similar situation vis-a-vis childcare providers, I think. We'll check. Catherine, you're an honorable soul even to ask. By the way, someone, I don't know, one of our colleagues said, the equivalent of an Eagle Scout for a Girl Scout is the Gold Award. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not.
Neither have I. What are you about to say?
So here we have a texter, also not disclosing who they are. Every year, this is interesting because this has become a big issue this year. And going forward, every year I file as soon as possible, and I'm very honest. However, in the early days of crypto, it's been incredibly difficult to calculate my taxable earnings by hand since many platforms weren't sending out W-2s. I've just looked the other way. If I can't figure it out, likely the IRS can't either.
Well, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Well,
so I can get away with it, or what's their point?
Right now with crypto, there is so little governance around this that a lot of people are able to cheat with crypto.
How do you know?
Because I read it in the paper this morning.
I don't know about that. How much do you know about crypto?
Not very much.
Nothing. Neither do I. Sarah in a car, you're on Boston Public Radio on tax day. Hey.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Yep.
I'm just a little bit confused, and I could be completely wrong, but I feel like a few weeks ago you guys had somebody on the air that was explaining that there's some kind of algorithm that singles out poor black people or people of low income when they audit them.
I don't recall that, and I'm looking at one of my colleagues. We don't recall, but what I can tell you historically, what I know to exist is there is, for each different kind of item on your tax return, there is an algorithm that suggests that based upon your circumstances and individual circumstances, if your deduction is above X or whatever it is, it automatically singles you out and increases the likelihood of being audited. I don't know about racial bias in auditing, but
actually, our team is
wow.
Is pointing out a new report. This comes from the New York Times. A new report documents systemic discrimination and how the IRS selects taxpayers to be audited with implications for a debate on the agency's funding.
Black Americans are much more likely to face tax audits. Wow. That's January of 2023. Well, you are right, Sarah, whether we discussed it here or not. That's a really important point you focused on, and I'm sorry we didn't know about it in advance. Thanks for mentioning that. Could you tell what they say? Is that conscious? Oh, it's there now? Even after kind of one of the most detailed studies on race. But are they saying it's racism, or what do they say? Black taxpayers are at least 3 times as likely to be audited by the IRS as other taxpayers, according to this study. And by the way, the Zoe Baird thing, she was not nominated for Supreme Court. She was nominated for Attorney General by Bill Clinton, whenever that was, during the Clinton years. I think we have time for another one.
Let's go to John calling from the car. Hi, John.
Hey, John. What's up?
Hey, good morning, folks. Good to hear you.
Yeah, thanks.
My dad was an IRS agent, and he always helped me with my returns. And I was a 1099 guy because I always worked for myself. I was a consultant. And what my dad told me to do, he said, always do at least 2 returns. He said, do one being completely honest on what your deductions should be. Do another one where you think your deductions you'd want them to be in order to maximize, your tax burden. And he said, you'll always be prepared anyway to understand where, if there's an issue, where you fudged it or where you really should be versus where you were. So that was his advice. And he was a button-down tax guy. So.
But wait, let me be clear. Was the bottom line that he was basically instructing his son how to get away with a little slicing of his tax burden?
Well, yeah, and what he was doing is saying rather than just to put a return together and say, hey, I hope they don't question this or that or this, he would say understand the areas where you're basically, fudging it a little bit so that if something happens.
That's a good father, don't you think, John?
Yeah, he was a great guy.
Sounds like he was a great guy and a helpful guy, as a matter of fact. John, thank you for the call. By the way, we should say to you, the 2 women who were honest before are being let out in cuffs, which is really sad.
That's unfortunate.
But it's a beautiful thing that they were candid before. Trenny is not here, correct? She's imminently here. So let's continue with this discussion for a few minutes. 877-301-8970. Amy in the car. Hi, Amy. What's up?
Hi, Amy.
Hey there. How are you guys? I'm
We're
a
good.
mortgage person, and I wanted to share 2 things.
Please.
That double-edged sword of, you maximize your deductions however you budget, and you're not going to qualify for your mortgage. So be careful on that. The second piece I would say is Donald Trump took away deductions for our school teachers. Example being, even I, as a W-2 person, could claim unreimbursed business expenses. So our teachers who spend a lot of money out of pocket on their school supplies and their classrooms lost that ability. Once again, the rich get richer and the little guy gets hit.
So, go ahead, Amy.
No, I was just going to say, they say they're going to audit everybody over 400K. So is that assuming these are $1 million earnings who are not declaring income? Or should they be looking for people who should be making 400K and aren't declaring it?
Well, first of all, let me correct, I think, the first part of that. They're not saying they're going to audit everybody over 400K. Karen, correct me if I'm wrong. They're saying that's where the focus is going to be, the increased auditing. I think 400,000 is the wealthiest 1% or 5%. It's clearly the top of the income scale. Amy, thank you for your call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970 is the number.
And Trenny made it through the traffic.
Oh, so we can end the cheating discussion.
We can end the cheating discussion. All right, well, coming up, as we have been mentioning, Sports Authority Trenny Casey breaks down the marathon results and more. You are listening to Boston Public Radio.
A Russian filmmaker was instrumental last year in getting Western governments to sanction Russian officials, targeting them for corruption and human rights violations. Vladimir Karamurza was arrested soon after. Now he's been sentenced to 25 years in prison. Next time on The World, his wife and partner Evgenia Karamurza on what happens next for her husband, their family, and their fight for freedom. She's on the world.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And South County, Rhode Island, featuring 100 miles of coastline and 20 public beaches. South County visitors can find many ways to enjoy the water in the Ocean State. Learn more at southcountyri.com. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Jane Fonda, Van Jones, Dr. Laurie Santos of the Happiness Lab, and explorer Celine Cousteau. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Jared Bowen sitting in for Marjorie, who's off for a few days. We're live from the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by NBC Sports Boston anchor and reporter Trenny Casey, who is a BPR contributor. Hey there, Trenny.
Hi, guys.
Hey to you.
Next time I will bike here or walk here the day after the marathon. I will not drive.
Did you cheat on your taxes?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. We use an accountant. We have like our I hate to call her a wealth manager because there's not a lot of wealth there, but our money manager does our taxes for us. And I'd have to assume she wouldn't cheat because if she cheats, then she gets in trouble and everybody's like
Excellent
losing
point.
jobs
No,
and
that's
stuff, right?
fine. Okay, good answer.
We're paying also this year, so I can't imagine we cheated.
I mean, on top of your withholding.
On top of our
Good for you.
withholdings, yeah.
Okay,
We're
very
also
proud
paying.
of you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, by the way, even if you came here at 7:30 this morning, you still would have been running into all this traffic.
What a
the day
nightmare.
after, it's not so fun. But anyway,
it's
let's
such
go.
a great day.
I was going to say, we're going to
yesterday.
transition back to yesterday. We always love the marathon, I think, for the stories. You don't even necessarily remember from year to year who wins, but you remember the stories. For me, they're as I think about it, it's the 2 wheelchair winners. One guy 10 minutes ahead of everybody else, the other woman stopping and pulling out her toolkit to fix her wheelchair.
Oh, I know. Would she say she needed an Allen wrench?
I didn't hear
because
that.
so I actually had to chuckle a little because I'm like, I couldn't figure out if Susanna Scaroni won the women's wheelchair race, but she had to stop because her axle was off. She's like, well, there's a lot of holes and bumps on the roads, and I was like, are you taking notice, Massachusetts? All those tax dollars, maybe repave the roads. So she had to get out. She said it had happened to her before, and so she took out her Allen wrench. She keeps an Allen wrench with her, and she fixed the axle on her bike and was able to finish and win. And her story is extra incredible, guys. She goes to the University of Illinois, which I didn't know this until I was listening to the broadcast yesterday, but it's sort of known for its wheelchair and I think mobility impaired athletics programs.
Oh, really?
And she was training, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was during COVID. So 3 years ago during COVID, she's out on the roads of Illinois. It's a sunny morning. She's coming up over a hill and she's hit by a car. Thrown into a ditch, has this long road ahead of her. Last year was like one of her first big races back. I interviewed her after. She finished second to Manuela Schar, I believe, won the wheelchair division last year. And she just was so happy to be out on the course. So for her to come back, she's finished third here, she's finished second. And to round it all out after all of that and to win the Boston Marathon yesterday is incredible. And then Manuel Hug, who won the men's division, has won Boston 6 times. He's a world-class athlete. He basically wins almost everything he touches. And yesterday he was so close, guys, to setting like he surpassed his own world record at over an hour. It's just 17 minutes and change. But man, he was close to getting to under 117, which would like obliterate the previous record. So yeah, there's just amazing things. And then you look at the men's race yesterday. Evans Chibet won last year. We haven't had back-to-back winners, and I don't know how long of the Boston Marathon, but he was not favored at all, even though he won last year, because Eliud Kipchoge is, and I know we're going to talk about just how fast he is. Kipchoge has broken 2 in the marathon. It was on a controlled course with pacers, perfect weather. Broken 2 hours. I should explain that. So he's run under 2 hours for the marathon. Put that in perspective, a pretty decent, if you're like in decent shape for a half marathon, so that's 13.1 miles, you run in about 2 hours. Like a lot of people try to reach that 2-hour barrier for a half marathon. He has run faster than that in a full marathon. But the only 2 marathons he's ever entered and lost, London 2018 when it was cold and rainy, Boston 2023, cold and rainy. What people don't take into consideration, yesterday it was cool, light winds out of the east-northeast, so you don't have a tailwind, you don't have a crosswind, so it's fairly good conditions, but it was really humid, and he missed a water stop. So you miss a water stop, you miss gel, going at that pace, Like your body really needs the nutrients, and he fell apart and finished 6th. I mean, he still is like, they're unbelievable. I was listening to the broadcast, and on the downhills, their mile, at mile 17, the men was 4:23, a 4:23 pace for 1 mile. Their next one on the uphill through the Newton Hills, 5:10. So that just shows you too how difficult the Newton Hills are. And then the women's winner, Helen Obiri, you know, she's only on her 2nd marathon ever. First Boston, wasn't even going to run this. She's really she's a 5K star on the track, so not even 10,000 meters. She's a 5,000 meter champion. But I thought the coolest moment for her is her daughter. I would guess, based looking at her size and stuff, I didn't see her actual age. I'd say she put her between 5 and 7. Yeah. She was there at the finish line for her. Image. She did the interview with her mom, and Helen talked about the importance of being a role model for women and for girls and for her daughter. So overall, I mean, like, it's such an incredible day.
I want to return to Kipchoge in a minute. Yeah, the guy who has the world record, who's actually run under 2 hours, even though it doesn't count because he was paced, in a second. But you know what I found amazing yesterday is Jared and I are on the air, and I'm thinking about it. I've lived in New York, Philadelphia, and here. I don't mean this critically at all. I mean observation. This is the most parochial city I've ever been in my whole life. If you notice, how many national, for example, radio stars succeed here? Nobody. They want local radio hosts. They want local sports hosts. They want everything local. The fact that the excitement level continues to be out of control every year for this, in light of the fact that Americans almost never win the damn race, is really, it's so unlike what Boston is and so great. But
I think there's a pride, and you talk about the local and the parochial. I think there's a pride in how difficult Boston is, right? Like, the Philadelphia.
Regardless of who wins.
Regardless of who wins. It is so, like, you can't even set, we talked about this last week, you can't even set actually, we talked about it last week, you weren't here. Yeah. You can't set the world record on Boston's course because of the amount of elevation that you lose. So it's too much downhill, right?
I see.
And it's also point to point, which they don't allow for world records. Philadelphia is not one of the big 5 marathons, the big 6 marathons. Because the big 6, for whoever the world marathon majors, it's Chicago, New York, Boston in the United States, and it is London, Berlin, and Tokyo internationally. Okay. So there's only 6. Boston is the oldest. Boston is the first. Boston is known as the hardest. Like, even Kipchoge, who had never run it before, said, like, I want to run this. This is a tactical race. It's difficult. I would guess the fact that, and he is 38, so I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that he would try to come back here and win, because if he can win all of the world marathon majors, that's a pretty incredible feat.
One of the incredible things about this guy, as we've said several times, the fastest marathon ever run is by this guy. Did you see the tumble later in the New York Times?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay, if you have not seen it, either here or at home, when the show's over, check your phone and type in tumble, ATOR. And what they've basically done is they have this conveyor belt.
Yeah, they've created like a gigantic treadmill.
Exactly, a huge treadmill. That's great. That's soft.
Yes.
It goes at the speed that this guy runs every single mile, which is 4 minutes and 37 seconds. That's his average. And people attempt to run as fast as he did for 26 miles for 100 meters, a little tiny space. How do they do?
They fall flat. They literally fall flat on their face.
Everyone.
Like, it's going so fast, and the turnover is so incredible that they like trip on their own 2 feet and fall, which is my greatest fear on a treadmill, is tripping on my own 2 feet and smacking my face on the ground.
Well, having said, it's really soft, because as you notice, everybody who falls is laughing afterwards, and they're really happy. It's obviously got real cushioning, but it shows you how this guy does this for 26 miles.
I know.
And mere mortals can't do it for 100 yards. It's incredible.
It really, if you watch these athletes too, like, some of them were definitely grimacing towards the end, but just the way, like, if you watch just a regular person run towards the end, a lot of us, our shoulders are kind of hunched, and like, you look like you're going to die, and they are still upright, and they are just like, it's just, they have enough like wherewithal to check their, like, I watch Evans Chebet, like, check his watch, kind of look over his shoulder, like, make sure that his competitors weren't, closing in on him. And also the distance, like, there's not a huge distance between first place, second, third. Like, it's a matter of seconds, but those seconds and having that kick at the end, like, it's just such a great day. But I always say, and I say this every single year, the best part of the marathon, while the elites are amazing to watch, while it's cool, like, I have a friend yesterday who broke 3 hours here. She ran 2:59.06. Wasn't her personal best, but still really, really good. Like, those things are amazing, but they're really great athletes. Like, she ran track at Northwestern.
I agree with what you're
right?
about
Like,
to
I've got
say.
friends who ran track at smaller places, and so they're just really naturally talented athletes. But when you watch the people who are out there for 4, 5, 6 hours sometimes, like like the mental fortitude it takes to push through when it's so hard. I can't tell you how hard it is. Like it's hard to put into words what you've run a full marathon, right?
2.
Yeah, like you've run them, right?
New York
like
City,
your body,
a long time ago.
your body, it's just it's not natural. As much as I love it, it's not natural for your body. I mean, I'm seeing people walk around today, and I'm laughing because they all walk like they have pooped their pants. Like they're all walking around like this, and they're going around because it's so hard
Nice
on your
image.
body.
And
There's not really any other
You know that
good way
Kirsten
to.
Sinema ran the damn race yesterday?
Yeah, I know, but they couldn't. And for security reasons, I understand why they don't. I don't know how
They didn't give out her bib number?
They didn't give out her bib number, but I understand that. Like, would you want? I mean, she's kind of a polarizing, controversial figure. Yeah.
Well, you know who also ran? One of the great hockey players of all time. Hockey defenseman Zdeno Chara. He finishes the marathon. I think it was 3:38. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think 3:38.23.
Here he is being asked if an NHL game or the marathon is more difficult. Here's Chara.
It's a tough question. I mean, it depends how you look at it. Some very hard games and runs in the playoffs. But this is obviously, again, something different that I've never done before. So I'm very, very honored to be part of this such a historical race, part of the community.
Do you see the look on his face, the smile, the last, couple hundred yards as he's approaching the finish line?
I mean,
it's really beautiful, actually.
It's awesome. When you come up Boylston, no matter what kind of race you've had, like, it could be bad, it could be good, it could be cold, it could be warm, and it's just like, it is the most incredible, what is it, like 600 yards, I think is this final push. It's not quite a half mile.
It's much longer than you think it's going to be.
It is much longer than you think it is, because you're like, oh, I'm turning the corner. Oh, I'm turning the corner. It's so far away. But I do think it's like just shy. I think it's like 600 meters. I think it's just shy of a half mile. But what I do know though about Zdeno Chara, I'm not surprised that he ran so well in his first ever marathon, despite he's 6'9".
I know
so he's a gigantic human being. But he was known for having the best cardio on the Bruins. Like, even when he's the same age as I am. He might even be a year older. I think he's 45, 46 years old. Like, he is, I don't know if you saw his arms. He's in incredible shape. And so he was always known for like his really tough workouts. Like Brock Holt, on the other hand, I'm sure former Red Sox, utility infielder. Everybody loved him. Like, really involved with Dana-Farber, still involved. So him and his wife Lakin ran for Dana-Farber. Brock Holt, baseball utility infielder, not quite the same cardio demands as a skating defenseman. He ran it in 5 hours and 46 minutes and change. So it's like, that puts into perspective, like, just because you're a pro athlete, just what kind of pro athlete you have to be a hockey player.
I want to mention one more person.
And by the way, when Brock was asked about it after, he goes, I'm one and done.
In the celebrity category, and at least deserves to be, a guy who was with us, I think, on Friday, Dave Fortier, who I met for the first time. 422. He's the guy who runs this One World Strong thing.
I heard you guys interviewing him.
Trauma,
yeah.
His organization reaches out to other survivors of trauma. The first instance was the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Now they travel all over the world, and he's doing unbelievably important and wonderful work. And congratulations to him.
Yeah, it was inspiring to see how many survivors came back just for this year to kind of put. And I think, to their credit too, saying that it's now time to kind of move on, that it's been, I don't want to say a burden on them to sort of be the face of what happened, but that it becomes what defines you, and that many of them are ready to be defined by something else.
Martin Richards' brother, who finished
Henry,
gave a
wonderful.
beautiful interview after the race. It was really quite moving.
If you have a chance, ESPN did a great story with Martin's 3 friends who also ran, his 3 best friends. So if you have a chance to check it out, Chris Connolly did it. It's a really beautiful story about their friendship.
Great to see you, Trenny Casey.
Thanks, guys. Sorry
so much.
I was
Appreciate
late.
it. It's perfectly okay.
Tax day. I was filing my taxes.
I'm sure you were not.
We have been speaking with Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Up next, low wages and high operating costs.
Yeah, more smart
PH comes from you. And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing compassionate care, and cancer specialists who are experienced in the cancer you have. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer. Keira Knightley, who has acted in several World War II films, discovers her grandparents played important.
HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to
and learning just opened in Somerville.
I'm Jared Bowen in for Marjorie Egan. Up in Maine, there are more questions than answers after authorities broke up what they described as a migrant smuggling operation with ties to a Massachusetts company. What happened to the 17 people housed there without visas? Globe columnist Marcela Garcia has that story and more. Then CNN's John King joins us for the latest national political headlines. Plus, another day, another chance to talk about AI taking over everything. AI art, music, script writing. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Opening statements are expected to begin today in Dominion Voting Systems' $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against Fox News and its parent company. The trial, stemming from baseless 2020 election fraud claims, is described as the most important defamation case against a major American media company in decades. Here's NPR's David Folkenflik.
After 36 hours of intrigue and uncertainty, Dominion is to have its day in court. Settlement talks came to naught. The voting tech company is seeking $1.6 billion in damages for lies Fox broadcast claiming it threw votes intended for then-President Donald Trump to Democratic challenger Joe Biden. The sides have been arguing over everything, including whether, as Fox asserts, Dominion has shaved about $600 million off how much it's asking for in damages. Dominion says it's not. Any settlement would encompass Dominion's demands for money and an apology. The case has the potential to affirm or reshape the nation's stringent protections for the press under First Amendment principles. David Folkenflik, NPR News, Wilmington, Delaware.
Senate Republicans say they're planning to block a move by Democrats to temporarily replace Senator Dianne Feinstein on the Judiciary Committee. NPR's Windsor Johnson reports the California Democrat's been on medical leave since February, prompting fresh calls for her resignation.
By voting against a temporary replacement for Feinstein, Senate Republicans would make it more difficult for Democrats to confirm President Biden's judicial nominees. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says Republicans will block any attempt to pack the courts with what he calls controversial judges.
The far left wants the full Senate to move a senator off a committee so they can ram through a small sliver of their nominees who are especially extreme or especially unqualified.
At least 60 votes are needed to pass the resolution to temporarily replace Feinstein, meaning at least 10 Republicans would need to join Democrats in the almost evenly split chamber. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
A Russian court is rejecting a Wall Street Journal reporter's appeal for his release. Evan Gershkovich was arrested last month on espionage charges. We have the latest from NPR's Charles Maines.
Ahead of the closed proceedings, journalists and U.S. Embassy officials were allowed briefly into the courtroom where they could see Gershkovich standing in a glass cage from which he occasionally smiled to onlookers. With the ruling, his lawyers say the judge rejected a more than $600,000 bail offer by the Wall Street Journal's parent company to place Gershkovich under house arrest pending trial. Instead, Gershkovich will remain in Moscow's Lefortovo prison until his next appeal, expected in late May. Gershkovich and his newspaper vehemently reject charges he was engaged in espionage, and the Biden administration has labeled him wrongfully detained, even as the Kremlin insists the journalist was caught red-handed without providing any evidence thus far. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
The Dow is down 74 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station owner Holtec has put plans on hold to dump radioactive water, but from a different plant other than Pilgrim. This one is in New York. Holtec said it will not discharge from its plant in Peekskill, which is about an hour train ride north of the city, into the Hudson River. Last week, Holtec said it would take a voluntary pause to allow for more time to explain the company's plan to local officials. Meanwhile, on Cape Cod, the state's still waiting for results from its testing of water from the Pilgrim plant. Those results are expected late this month or in early May. Rising temperatures could explain why a certain tick has spread to the region. The Lone Star tick has been spotted on the Cape and Islands in recent years, but it used to only be found in the southern portions of the United States. Patrick Roden-Reynolds is director of the Martha's Vineyard Tick Program. He says Lone Stars are the cheetahs of the tick world.
Lone Stars, they get on you, they crawl up your body very quickly. Within 15, 30 seconds, they can be up around your chest or torso, and they'll bite almost immediately.
That's quick compared to deer ticks, which can take several hours before they bite. Lone Stars don't carry Lyme disease, but they do carry a number of other illnesses. Yikes. In sports, the Celtics and Hawks have Game 2 of their NBA playoff series tonight. Celtics lead 1-0. Red Sox host the Twins at Fenway. We're looking at 57 degrees in Boston. Could tap out at 60 degrees before the day is out.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments' team of specialists offer guidance on investing, retirement income, and Social Security. FisherInvestments.com. Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. I am Jim Browdy, and I want to correct myself. He is not Marjorie Egan. He is sitting in for Marjorie Egan. He would be Jared Bone, Executive Arts Editor at GBH. Hello, Jared.
For the record, I'm happy to be confused for Marjorie Egan.
Oh, how nice. In any case, good to see you again. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. By the way, a little bit later in the show, in about an hour, we're going to talk to John King from CNN. One of the things we're going to talk to John about is maybe the most important media trial of our lifetimes, the Dominion trial against voting machines, against Fox News. The jury has been selected. They're on a lunch break. The opening arguments will be given this afternoon. One of the jurors who was picked, Jamie, our coworker, was telling me he was picked to be on the jury, Jared. And right after he's picked, he stood up and said, I didn't get any sleep last night. I got to get out of here. And he was excused, which is probably a pretty good thing. But this huge trial begins in just a few minutes, and we will follow it faithfully. Here in eastern Massachusetts, families are paying more than almost anywhere in the country. Preschool and center-based childcare takes up on average 20% of a family's budget. There are some voucher programs for lower-income families. The state has promised to increase grants for providers, but labor shortages, high operating costs, all leave families on wait lists and panicked about how to pay. Lauren Cook is on the front lines of the crisis. She's CEO of Ellis Early Learning in Boston. Amy O'Leary is an advocate for making it more affordable with Strategies for Children's executive director. Amy and Lauren, it's great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for being here.
By the way, that was your 6-year-old daughter, Austin, who was cheering the loudest. I want to be clear, okay?
This is obviously a tough situation. It's the subject of campaign promises. We know what families are facing. They can't get help. But Lauren, I'll start with you. What is the reality for child care and early child care education coming out of the pandemic when so many jobs were lost or changed?
The jobs I tend to focus on are the jobs of our teachers and the fact that we have so few teachers coming and staying in the field. The workforce crisis in early childhood is real and it's devastating. We have a wait list of 990 families at Ellis. We have 3 locations in the city and there are no candidates to hire. So fortunately, all our classrooms are open now, but we don't have enough certified teachers to really do our best work. And it all comes down to pay equity and the fact that teachers just don't earn what they deserve.
Can we put the 900 on the wait list in context? How many seats are filled in your 3 centers?
244.
So 4 times as many people are looking for a seat as those who are lucky enough to be occupying one.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You know, Amy, we rarely address anything positive on the show. We are the sort of centerpiece of negativity. But it seems to me, you have Elizabeth Warren saying when she was running for president every minute since, including on the show, childcare is is infrastructure for families. Joe Biden just yesterday put out this executive order on childcare. Maura Healey talks about it nonstop. Michelle Wu talks about it nonstop. Is there about to be a breakthrough in this nightmare, or is it just wishful thinking?
I think there is going to be. I'm very hopeful about a breakthrough. I started my work in Boston at the South End at Ellis as a preschool teacher.
Oh, really?
And
How much were you making when you were a teacher there?
I was making $16,000 with a BA in early education. It was the 90s, but compared to my other friends, it was still in the lower end. And my kind of role from preschool teacher to lobbyist has not been a straight line, but it really was my experience at Ellis, wanting to help children and families in a bigger way. And I do feel hopeful. I felt hopeful often, but I really feel like we are on the breakthrough of big policy change.
Can we stay on this just for a second, Lauren? I have to say, and I'm sure this is something you struggle with all the time, and maybe the question is naive. Since it has been established, it seems for me, for years, how important to a kid's development pre-K education is, why has it taken so long for people in power to say, just like K through 12 is a public responsibility for all of us, why isn't pre-K through 12 a public responsibility? Is it all about the cost? Is it that all it is?
It has to be, because the research is so clear, the brain science is so clear.
Explain the brain science to us.
So children who attend high-quality early education programs like Ellis are more likely to graduate from high school. They're less likely to be incarcerated. They're less likely to rely on social services as adults. They're more likely to have longer life expectancy, better health outcomes. Pretty much everything good in life, your success in adulthood is formed through your formative 0 to 5 years. And it's not just pre-K. Education begins at birth. The time between 0 and 3, infancy to 3, is like critically important to development.
So, Amy, I'm wondering, I want to go back to what you just said, that there is hope. I don't want to drag us back into the muck, but if it has taken us so long and we haven't seen that much improvement, if the employees aren't there, if the money isn't coming, if even what the president is about to sign and place emphasis on isn't anywhere near what he promised during the campaign, how do you see this moving forward positively?
So as a former preschool teacher, I am eternally optimistic just about things in general. But I will say it was the money, but it also was COVID provided an opportunity to really highlight this issue in a way that we've never seen. To have babies sitting behind on Zoom cameras, to have toddlers trying to be busy while people were working from home. Suddenly, all the things that we knew were in the public eye. We have not changed our priorities, even though the brain research tells us how critical these early years are. So that's what I'm hopeful for. It's not just the people who work in this field, who have young children, who are fighting for this. There's been this bigger awareness of why we need high-quality programs starting at birth to ensure not just for the children and families we're serving now, but for the future of our economy and our workforce. So I think what we have seen policies through COVID, the federal dollars provided such relief to our providers who in 6 weeks in Massachusetts, we set up emergency childcare. We saw real-time policy development. As someone who's been doing this work for a long time, we know how long it takes to change policies and law. We saw things change that were better for children and families because we were in the middle of a global
But that's all one-time stuff. I mean, I don't mean to minimize it. The good news out of the horrible news of the pandemic is government stepped up to do a lot of things it hadn't done before, including what you're describing. But a lot of that, whether it's food stamps or whatever it is, disappears as the pandemic at least is beginning to disappear.
I will say that Massachusetts has stepped in a way that other states have not. Other states are seeing that funding cliff from the federal dollars. Massachusetts has stepped up. With the legislature and now the Healey-Driscoll administration, we have seen state dollars replace those federal dollars to the tune of $490 million to support all programs across the Commonwealth.
So what's that going to mean? So translate that for one of the 900 families on her waiting list, Lauren's waiting list at Ellis. How does that $475 million translate into greater, affordable, accessible opportunity for them and their kids?
So I think first, it kept programs open so that this was a lifeline that helped programs stay open. Second, it has helped programs target these funds toward the staff. So Lauren can talk more about bonuses that they've been able to provide for educators. It also is about thinking about the infrastructure. This is infrastructure. So just keeping the doors open, thinking about what it's going to take, and also making sure that teachers have what they need to go to work every day.
Lauren, I'm wondering what kind of stigma you're having to overcome here. Going through this research, I saw President Nixon's name come up over and over again because he vetoed early childhood care, and I wonder what kind of precedent that set, if he changed the conversation in the nation. What about people who hear what Amy said and who think, well, it's not that much different that I would go into this field and not make a lot of money? How much do you have to counter here?
I think we need a huge influx of dollars to be able to pay teachers better, but I think we need a whole branding campaign. We need early education and care to be better respected and better understood by the public. This needs to be a profession that people want to be in if we're going to survive. We think about the workforce in general terms a lot and the impact on the economy that a slowdown of childcare can lead to in the economy. But we need to think about the workforce within early childhood education, because without that workforce, the rest of the workforce has no future.
Is this money that Amy was talking about a minute ago causing you to be able to actually pay more money to your teachers?
Yeah. So we've, first of all, we've given several bonuses, which bonuses in early childhood education was never a thing. It was ARPA money, so American Rescue Plan Act money, and then also we have been able to raise rates, provide raises for teachers, not only from state investment, but also city investment. Mayor Wu has been a huge champion.
But you still can't hire people.
No, we need to work on the branding of the field, and we need to pay them more. I mean, it's better, but they're not making livable wages. You can't live in Boston off of what an early educator makes.
I hope the problem with the branding doesn't come from the parent who is entrusting their most important thing to another human being. So what is it? The worker, him or herself, because you pay so little in the industry? Where's the branding suffering?
I think it's the public understanding and perception of early childhood. Lots of people still consider it babysitting, which is such an insult because it's the opposite of it. Yeah. And people call it daycare. We're not taking care of days. This is education for our youngest learners, and it's the most important education we provide.
That's the voice of Lauren Cook, who is the CEO of Ellis Early Learning in Boston. Amy O'Leary, our other person here, is an advocate for making it more affordable through strategies for children. She's the executive director there. So Lauren, staying with you, explain to people the great philosophical debate around early education, this universal versus targeting. Could you explain what each is and why the consensus seems to be that universal is the way to go?
In terms of funding?
Well, the whole notion of mixing low-income kids with kids from families of means. The conventional wisdom, at least I think 20 years ago, was all the money should be focused at poor kids. That's where the need is greatest. But at least from what I read, maybe I'm misunderstanding, this notion that having the full spectrum of people, universal approach to this, benefits everybody more than even exclusively targeting money to low-income kids and families.
It's true. So research has shown that children from lower-income households who attend high-quality early education schools have higher achievement gains than kids who are in segregated programs. Mm-hmm. Research also shows that children who attend racially diverse schools like Ellis build more empathy and are less prejudiced. So we like to think of all children thriving together. Ellis's model is extremely unique. 2/3 of our families face financial hardship and receive government subsidies to afford childcare, and 1/3 of our families have the means to pay full tuition. So we have children whose parents are some of the most accomplished Boston professionals, and we have children whose parents are seeking housing and seeking employment and are living in shelters. And research over and over again, a recent study in February said the same thing, that children, when they're together, they all thrive. And fortunately, UPK is doing it right, the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program in Boston, because they are funding universal preschool classrooms.
Do you subscribe to this notion, Amy?
I do. I think when we see in public policy that if everybody is getting something, it tends to be a more popular proposal. I also think, to what you said earlier, nothing magical happens when you turn 5 years old and we decide it's a public good. Something magical happens when a baby is born, but we have tended to look at that more as a parent responsibility and less about public investment. If we were serious about the research, we would be investing more earlier. It's common sense, right? If you invest earlier, you have better outcomes longer term. So everything in the education pipeline will be better off.
Do you hear anybody? I mean, if the consensus, Lauren said before that there is a consensus, I think you suggested and answered my question, almost everybody agrees how important this is in positions of power. The obstacle is the funding. Do you encounter on Beacon Hill people who say, I'm not sure this is a high enough priority for us, or is everybody bought in it is just about the money?
I think folks are bought into the concept. I think part of the challenge is the way that it's funded is a complex and complicated system. So it's been hard, even as advocates, to think about what's the mechanism and the way to get money to people who need it the most, and then think about what everybody needs.
Isn't that just a BS excuse not to do it? To say, I'm serious. I mean, sit down in a room with people who care about the issue and figure out the best way to deliver money to something that's hugely important to the development of a child. No? I mean,
I think part of it is we wanted to preserve family choice. If you have a 6-week-old baby, you want to think about where you're taking that baby. So turning it totally over to policymakers to just make the easiest, maybe efficient decision, I think the field has been reluctant to do that.
What is the consequence right now for those families who can't get into your school, or the families that are just waiting for this funding to come, or the teacher shortage to turn around so that they have opportunity? What happens until then?
I think one of the things we're most excited about are local communities coming together to first better understand what's the demand, what's the want, what's the need, and then think about how we can match up families with the programs that they need and they want. We know that infant care is a huge challenge right now. Anybody that has a baby is looking for programs, and they're seeing trying to have a baby, and how old is your child? So I think when you think about where parents are, the programs locally are really trying to work with their local leaders to figure out the best places and the best way to ensure parent need is met, but also the programs being able to serve them.
Well, yeah, Lauren, same question for you. I mean, it must just be like a knife in your heart to know that you have this huge waiting list.
It is, and I think it's also really detrimental to the economy, because what we've seen is women are leaving the workforce to take care of their children in the home, or kids are in unlicensed early education settings, like a neighbor's home or a friend, and they're just figuring out how that they can work and have someplace safe for their child to go. But it's not optimal. I mean, the research shows clearly what's optimal. It's devastating for the economy, it's devastating for women's careers, it's devastating for our young learners who will not be set up for success in kindergarten if we don't get it right in the beginning. The earlier you invest, the larger the ROI. And I would like to point to one Nobel Prize winning economist, James Heckman, who's done a lot of work in this area. And it's very clear that the younger we invest, particularly for kids from lower income households, the greater the return for everyone.
You know, we were talking a minute ago about this universal versus target approach, meaning targeted to low-income families as opposed to the whole spectrum of families, kids being involved. And you say this, the research, and the same research I've seen says the results are better for all involved. But to wealthy families or wealthier families who are not reliant upon government helping in some way, do they resist that sort of integrated approach, for lack of a better expression? You're shaking your head no, Lauren.
Fortunately, at Ellis, we attract typically very mission-driven, socially progressive families who want their children in diverse learning environments. We have 80% of our children are children of color, 80% of our staff are children of color. I think if you're choosing to raise your kid in a city, you want them in a diverse, high-quality learning environment, and that's what Ellis offers, which isn't always the case.
It's a heartening notion.
What about what the president is doing right now? As I mentioned earlier, his actions for funding are not anywhere near what he promised on the trail. He is talking about it again because presumably he is going to run for re-election. He is hearing what we're talking about here, that this is so vital to all families. But what's the agenda he's setting?
I think if you look at the executive order, it talks about so many of the pieces that we've been trying to figure out at the state and local level. This idea of workforce, this idea of supporting them, this idea of coordinating government efforts. So I think we are encouraged to see this. I think Build Back Better, which I don't even want to talk about because it was very sad when that all happened. But the president was behind that.
Because it was left out of the plan, you mean?
Well, right. Suddenly when it came down to negotiations in Congress, it wasn't there. Our delegation fought hard for that. So I think, as a political pawn sometimes that we feel like, this should not be part of the political gaming. We need to invest at the federal, the state, the local level in this. If we can't keep being surprised that we're seeing these challenges. I just want to highlight Lauren's point about women in the workforce. It still has fallen mostly to women. During COVID, we talked to many HR folks in large companies in Boston. I also think parents are more willing to say, this is not going to work for me. You know, to say like my baby's sick, I can't come to work, they would be worried they would lose their job. So I think we've just seen a bigger understanding of what it really takes and how work needs to be flexible, not just by saying you can work whenever you need it, but what are the policies that employers can be doing to help support this.
I know you were a teacher a while ago at Ellis. Were you a teacher in the earlier phase of this, Lauren?
Just a nonprofit person and baby lover.
Okay, so tell us what the experience is like teaching young kids in a place like Ellis or any place.
So during COVID, Strategies for Children started a 9:30 call. We have met almost every weekday since March of 2020 to hear from the people doing the work.
Oh.
On Friday, I visited Ellis and volunteered in an infant classroom. And I got to tell you, it's been a while since I've been in the classroom. To be an adult responsible for 7 babies, the responsibility is so high. Parents are coming in every day, dropping their children off. If you have teachers out, Lauren's sometimes working the front desk because the staffing crisis, the people show up at 7:30 and the children stay till 6. Making that happen every day with the most precious commodity that any family has is a huge stress. The burnout is real. People feeling like we've kept it together, we just need a little bit of hope to keep going, is real. And I think it's also incredible at Ellis, where you have a baby start at 6 weeks and they can stay through kindergarten. You get to watch that child develop so many different pieces. And I would also say, being in the infant classroom reminded me that early education is individualized curriculum. There is not one checklist that you go through the day because you have children learning at all different levels. So the fact that folks are doing this every day, we are not paying them what they should be getting, should be a wake-up call for all of us.
How angry are you about that? I mean, you're both acting like grown-ups in this conversation. I'm getting aggravated and I have nothing to do with it. When you do something that is this important to so many people and you know that intellectually everybody who could be helping you gets it, but isn't doing enough, do you not feel like pulling your hair out? Don't give the politic answer. Give the honest answer.
So we toe the line. We toe the line for being grateful for the increases in investments that we've seen for the government and being like, and this is not enough. Like it will take over $1 billion to really stabilize early childhood. And if a budget is a statement of your values, it does make me mad because the value is not there.
So speaking of it would take $1 billion, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, since you're the one that's Amy O'Leary, who's from Strategies for Children, Lauren Cook from Ellis Early Learning in Boston. A significant chunk of the money that I believe Beacon Hill's coming up with is from the so-called millionaire's tax, is it not? Half it's supposed to go to education, half it is supposed to go to, not supposed to, is constitutionally required to go to transportation. That's where a significant amount of this money is coming from. Am I right about that?
Yes, there's different proposals between the governor and the House, but they both take money from that.
Well, it's heartening, actually.
Amy, I want to go back to something you just said about starting with your local resources. So for parents who are on waiting lists right now, for parents who don't know what to do, but they desperately need care, what do you tell them? Do they march down to town hall in local communities? Where do they start and what do they say?
I think that's where we've seen a lot of developments recently. Typically, if you need to get on a child care wait list, you go to the state. I think we are seeing more action locally, especially in the city of Boston. Mayor Wu and her administration has really thought about what does it look like when a baby is born, how can we continue to help support that? So I think definitely connect with Strategies for Children. We're a statewide organization. We can help connect folks.
What's your website? What's your website?
So strategiesforchildren.org.
Well, that makes sense.
And I think, too, being willing to ask for what you need as a parent. I think just sending that message of, I need this, I need help in getting it. Sometimes people think it's their own problem to solve. We have had communities that parents weren't getting on wait lists because of this tension of a stay-at-home mom or a working mom, but then we never knew the real demand for programs. So if you need it, and we know that it's good for children, make sure you get on those lists or reach out for resources.
And last thing for me, do you track the 900 on the waiting list? Do you know what happens to that family? As you say, does the woman in the relationship end up leaving work part-time? What's the typical situation when they can't get into a place like yours?
It would be a luxury to track them. We are so leanly staffed. Okay. We are just focused on the kids in our care.
How do people find you? Like a website?
Oh, yes, we do have a website.
What is that?
ellisearlylearning.org.
ellisearlylearning.org.
And I will say that our wait list is completely like word of mouth driven. We don't advertise in any way. As a nonprofit, we just don't have the funding for that. So it's quite an honor that people are seeking us out in that way.
Well, you're doing about the most important work in the world, both of you, and I hope elected officials take this to heart and do the right thing. And I wish all parents good luck, too. It's great to meet you both. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Lauren Cook is the CEO of Ellis Early Learning, an early childhood education provider in the South End. Amy O'Leary is the Executive Director of Strategies for Children, a statewide advocacy organization for early education. Coming up, a new Jewish tavern has opened up in Somerville, combining bar culture and Jewish cultural learning. We'll speak to the founder and chef at Lair House next. Yes, Jim, they also brought you food.
I know that.
You're listening. We can smell it. It smells fantastic. You're listening to Boston.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Jared Bowen sitting in for Marjorie's off for a couple of days. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Local bars have the uncanny ability to turn strangers into neighbors in a matter of hours. They're community spaces, gathering places, a vital part of our social fabric. Lair House is a new Jewish tavern in Somerville. It aims to keep bar culture and Jewish culture alive and thriving together. Here to discuss the concept and share some snacks, thank goodness, from the menu is co-founder Rabbi Charlie Schwartz and executive chef Noah Klickstein. Welcome to you both. It's great to have you here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us.
By the way, you two smell really good. Let me just say that. We'll find out how it tastes in a minute.
Amazing.
So, I am so fascinated to learn. I didn't realize this, that the tavern really it suggests so many things. I think we associate it today. It's just kind of a popular name for cities around the city or places around the city or in our towns. But start by telling us what a tavern really means, what happened in olden times at taverns.
Yeah, so I think you're alluding to the kind of Jewish history of taverns in Europe. So Jews were often tavern keepers, which is a tradition that's kind of died out and that we're kind of alluding to. But we really see it in this iteration in Somerville as a gathering space, as a place for people to come together and share ideas and meet types of people that they might not otherwise meet. So really like a community gathering space. And that's why the marriage of a tavern and a house of learning, which is what Lair House is, makes so much sense to us.
Not just food.
Non-Jewish people as well, yeah. We like to say that you don't have to be French to go to a French restaurant, so you don't have to be Jewish to go to a Jewish tavern.
Well, I said not just food, but that
not
too.
Just food. Oh, sorry.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
What is we're going to taste some of the food, Noah, in a couple of seconds. So give us a sense of the kind of food.
Well, we are lucky enough that we get to explore the world through the Jewish lens. There has been so many different communities throughout the world of the Jewish diaspora. So we have on the table in front of you and at our menu food from around Eastern and Western Europe. We have food from Western Africa. We have drinks that come from Mexico City and from South America. A little of everywhere.
Is everything kosher?
Everything is certified kosher.
So no meat, but you do have fish. Is that right?
Correct. We call it Jewish vegetarian.
I like that. You know, I want to go back to you, Rabbi Charlie, for a second here to your answer, which was not the question, but it is an important question. I'm a lapsed Jew and agnostic. Jared is not a Jew. By the way, I was number one in my bar mitzvah class, but that was a long time ago. I was, actually. So how do we fit into your vision? And you're one of the co-founders is Jonathan Four, who's been on the show here, Atlas Obscura, people know, and the memory champion of the world, that sort of thing. So how do people like us fit into the concept behind Lair House?
Yeah, it's a great question. We like to think of Lair House as a place that's really putting the best of the Jewish world forward to everyone, Jews and non-Jews alike, whether that's food or drink, or we're the people of the book, so amazing texts and learning. So we have a library of about 3,000 texts, including religious texts like the Talmud, but also Kafka and graphic novels and fiction and just amazing, amazing things. So my guess is that if you showed up at Lair House, you would get a great drink, some amazing food, and you probably connect to some element of your Jewish identity in some way that's interesting to you. And if you're not Jewish, you'd learn something about the Jewish experience in an interesting way.
Is that actually happening? I know you've only been around a short period of time. That is actually happening?
Yeah,
not
so
just
we have classes running, and I will say that the library experience is incredible because it's 3,000 volumes of all Jewish books and a lot of stuff that people have never seen before. So just also that exploring process as well.
I want to stay with you for just 1 second. Your colleague, again, Jonathan Four, who helped found this.
Josh Four.
Josh Four, I'm sorry. Is that his brother? Does he have a brother?
Yeah,
it's okay, Josh. My apologies. He had one of his lines in some story I read was, your location, which used to be Kirkland Tap and Trotter, right? And I always wondered what was going to go in there.
Yeah.
Tony Moore is one of the great chefs and great places
They've
ever.
inherited a great spot.
It is a great spot. The densest population of post-college Jews with the least Jewish infrastructure, he said. Is that a fantasy, or is that
it's
really
real.
believed?
It's real. It's about 35,000 young Jews live in that area.
Really?
Yeah, and they're constantly coming through because of the academic scene there. And there are amazing Jewish institutions in Cambridge and Somerville, and it's not quite what you'd expect given the size of the Jewish community there. So there's a great opportunity, but it's also this amazing intellectual epicenter that we're again a house of learning makes a lot of sense outside of the Jewish community.
Well, how did you identify the need for a place like this?
It came out of the pandemic, I have to be honest with you. When Josh and I were kind of thinking through what happens next after lockdown, and thinking through what it's going to mean to gather and what gathering spaces are going to need to look like after the pandemic, or wherever we are now. And so it came out of that kind of need, that kind of desire to connect with people in a deep way. And so the idea kind of started iterating, and now I get to work with Noah on a Jewish tavern house of learning.
Okay, so Chef Noah, we've been polite and talked about the issues. Let's talk about the food.
The important thing.
What is this incredible smelling thing that Jared and I both have? What is this thing?
That is a little stew that is taken right from the book of Genesis. It is red lentil stew.
Yeah. Oh my God.
With Ethiopian flavors in there. One of the oldest Jewish diaspora communities. So we have some Ethiopian Shabbat bread as a crouton on top, and this very spiced lentil stew.
It's fabulous. So ask him why he's not eating any of it. Why are you not eating it?
Because I don't have a spoon, which is on its way to me right now.
Jamie, thank you. It is. The spices
in
this thing are spectacular. Let me tell you the thing I'm really interested in. I'm a little nervous about this because I don't want to badmouth you guys with you here. One of my favorite foods on the planet is chopped liver. I mean, there's nothing. And you have vegetarian chopped liver, correct?
Putting some right in front of you.
How nervous are you that I'm going to hate this?
Not nervous at all.
And why is that?
Because
what is it if it's not chopped liver?
Not to boast about myself, but I
Feel
do
free.
think I make the best chopped liver, second only to my grandmother. So when I found out that we, asked to make some Jewish food, I was like, great, chopped liver is going on the menu. Until we found out that it's a kosher dairy restaurant. That didn't stop me, so put a little vegan chopped liver on the menu.
So did you create this recipe?
This one is created by me, yes.
What is it?
It is eggplant and some cashews blended together for the texture, and then the meatiness still comes from onions and shiitake mushrooms that are deeply caramelized and then deglazed with some brandy, as my grandmother would.
Are you really not nervous that I'm going to hate this?
No.
Tell the truth. So can you speak for a minute while I taste this and see how I feel about Jared?
I love that you've mentioned your grandmother twice in about the last 90 seconds. How much do you go back to lineage and ancestry and family recipes?
A lot. I grew up in a mixed Sephardic and Ashkenazi household, which means that my dad his family's from the Ukrainian, Polish area. I'm not sure exactly where. And my mom's side comes from one of the oldest families from Spain, Portugal. And so it was really fun to be able to draw on both these different communities and different food influences when creating all these dishes.
And then what does it mean to be able to share that?
It means a lot. I was with my grandmother for Passover this week ago, past holiday, and she was very excited to hear that her love of liver got passed on so much that it's now at the restaurant.
I'm going to keep you in suspense for a minute while I ask you, where'd you cook before?
So before here, I was at Juliet's.
Oh, in Union Square?
Yeah, in Union Square, as well as at Peregrine,
which is their other place.
Exactly.
In the hotel, whatever it's called, on Charles Street. What's the hotel called?
Whitney Hotel.
Is it Whitney? Okay, that's great. In the lobby. The restaurant's in the lobby. It's really good.
It's a beautiful little spot. And then before there, I was down the street at L'Espalier for couple years.
So let me tell you, I was convinced that I was going to have to BS you and say it's fine. It is spectacular. And the thing you got beyond the taste, to me, the whole thing with vegan and vegetarian food is can you mimic the texture of the actual thing? Mm-hmm. And you really have. It's really, really good. Congratulations.
What we like to call the schnibbly bits.
Schnibbly bits.
Are definitely in there.
It's a technical term.
I believe that. It's really good. And it looks exactly like it and it tastes. It's a really good replica kind of deal.
If I may, the schnibbly bits are actually part of the kosher story.
How so?
Innards are not something that are traditionally kosher food.
Mm-hmm.
But the liver was allowed to be kosher, the verb to kosher something, if you cook it a lot. You really roast it. And when you really roast liver, it comes a little like granular and has schnibbly bits.
Schnibbly bits.
To me, that was the most important aspect in the texture.
So what is the schnibbly bits? I'm sorry to obsess on the chopped liver. What is the schnibbly bit thing here in the?
It is a mixture of the nuts and
the eggplant.
And exactly. So everything just gets kind of processed together, but not blended.
Okay. Jared wants to talk about something serious. What else did you bring? What's in that thing there in the white container? What's that?
So over here is a little of Sunday mornings for me, which was smoked salmon and cream cheese. Are you sure he can steal it first?
No, just bring it over.
Well, it's just he takes the parking space, he takes the food. I'm used to it.
So it's a little smoked salmon pate.
Looks fabulous.
So, what I was going to ask is, I think a lot of people who aren't as familiar with Jewish food think they know it because of Jewish delicatessens. Yeah. Were you at pains to kind of avoid that and create this new introduction?
Very much so. I think it's something that I've really enjoyed about the space at Lair House is sharing Jewish culture and identity through food in ways that people aren't used to, which is not just smoked meat, even though we do have a smoked beet Reuben on the menu. It is not just smoked salmon, which we do have, but it's things like fish and chips. It's things like the Ethiopian flavored stew. It's drinks like the Colonial Roma from Mexico City, and something that Charlie Schwartz really wants me to push.
What's he holding up? What is that?
This is amba and tahina mixed together.
What does that mean?
So tahina is tahini sauce mixed with some flavor like garlic and lemon.
What's
and
the first thing you mentioned?
Amba is a pickled mango condiment that came from North India and through the spice trades made its way to the Middle East, where it kind of got blended and added with turmeric and fenugreek, and was then, you find it at falafel stands and shawarma stands, and you kind of get mixed together with the tahina when you put it on the sandwiches. And
why is he so excited about this?
It's just delicious.
Bring it on.
It's just a delicious thing, and it's a great It's a great story of Jewish migration, of Baghdadi Jews traveling to India and bringing back these flavors and integrating it into their lives and dishes.
Hey,
can I just point out there's strategy in my method here because look where all the food ends up. If I go
Salmon's pretty
number
great
two.
too, by the way. Salmon is really, really good. Yeah, are you worried, Rabbi, about, I mean, we've talked a lot on the show, everybody is talking about the rise of anti-Semitism in this country, and even in liberal places like Massachusetts. Hate crimes are up dramatically. I think 6th highest number in the United States of America. I mean, this is almost Target-like. I mean, this is not sort of mixed into a larger culture. You're front and center, Jewish culture, Jewish food. Are you nervous or are you not?
I mean, I'm worried because of all the things that you said, but I'm not going to let that stop me from having like a joyous and prideful approach to my Jewish identity and sharing that with other people. You know, today is actually Yom HaShoah. It's Holocaust Remembrance Day. And for me, like one of the best ways to honor the lives lost in the Holocaust is to have vibrant, joyful, lively, creative, playful life, Jewish life in America. So that's what we're doing here.
Is anybody else doing this?
This is the only one in the world. This is the only place.
Is that really true?
Yeah. The idea of a Jewish tavern and house of learning doesn't exist. A Lair house like this doesn't exist anywhere but in Somerville.
So you got to be really nervous, let's face it.
Excited.
Nervous.
Nervous isn't that's not the emotion.
It's not your thing?
No, not right now. Talk to me in a year.
Did you taste the salmon?
The salmon is heaven.
Yeah, what's in there? I don't mean to give away all your secrets. What's in the salmon?
I happily share all my recipes.
Go ahead. What is it?
It is some wonderfully hot smoked salmon, cream cheese, red onion, and then a little vinegar. That's it.
Fabulous.
So how have you seen, I know that we kind of talked a little bit about this, but I'm interested about the programming and the coming together, what you have seen come together and what people are talking about is in the months that it's been months, right, since you've been open, or we were talking about weeks?
It's been 3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay, so in the 3
Granted.
weeks, what have you seen come to fruition already?
People are just really excited to be in the space. It's a really special space that's like nothing else in the world, I would say. People are gravitate towards the books and the texts that we have on the walls. And gravitate towards each other. There is that kind of overlap of communities in really interesting ways. So yeah, it's just an exciting place to be. There's no analog to it.
And Noah, you have this great freedom. If you were in some of these other restaurants that we talk about here, you're the chef. So what's that freedom like to devise and create and experiment?
It's exciting and a little nerve-wracking. It's fun to be able to showcase this identity through food. Something I really love doing is sharing emotion and story through food. And I think because Lair House is about books and learning, sharing stories through the food just comes so naturally with that.
Yeah, I don't know if this is analogous, but I've only said this about 10,000 times on the show, we were lucky enough to have Anthony Bourdain here and on television with me the same day. He was here at the library and we were beyond excited. And the brilliance of Anthony Bourdain is I learned more about cultures about which I knew nothing or very little or less than I should have through the lens of food than I ever had in my prior decades of visiting places. And it seems to me that's a wonderful entry point here as well. You're both nodding. Rabbi, that's part of the deal, right?
Yeah. We like to say that eating the food is actually part of the learning experience. So Naomi Levy is our bar consultant who's designed all of the drinks. She was at Eastern Standard for a long time and at Bow Street Market. She's fantastic. So she has a drink on the menu called the Colonial Roma, which is named after the Jewish neighborhood in Mexico City that has tamarind in the drink. It's a delicious drink with tamarind and mezcal, all sorts of amazing things. So the Syrian Jewish community in Syria is the only Middle Eastern community that uses tamarind in their cooking, really. Others kind of do, but really it's Syrian cuisine. They migrate to Mexico City, where tamarind is also a popular component. And so we bring that story of, again, migration and place through in this drink. So you're learning about where these Jewish communities come from and who they interacted with. So yeah, the eating and drinking is part of that learning process.
Why did Josh Ford care about this? I mean, I bring him up repeatedly because he's a pretty high profile guy, one of the smartest people on the planet, I think it's fair to say. And did he memorize, what's his claim to fame? He memorized every card in the deck faster than anybody in the history of the world. Is that what he
won
did?
the U.S. Memory Championship.
Memory Palace is what he calls his thing.
Moonwalking with Einstein.
Why is he interested in this thing?
He loves this stuff. He loves Jewish community. He loves text. He loves creative endeavors. It's really, this was our idea together, and he just absolutely loves the creativity and energy and ability to bring new things in the world, in interesting ways.
This yellow thing, what's this thing called again?
The ambetagina.
Spectacular. I mean, really spectacular. Did you try that or what?
I did try it.
What do you think of that? How come you're silent on the food? Is that because you don't like it, or what's the deal?
I thoroughly enjoyed everything. Why do you think it's still sitting in front of me and I'm not passing it back, especially the salmon? That's just going to stay over here.
It's even better when you get to dip some fries in there. So
Where
you're getting
the
some
fries?
experience. They don't travel as well. You have to come visit us.
One last thing that I'm dubious about. Obviously, I admitted my cynicism about the chopped liver, which passes the test. You have a beet Reuben kind of thing?
Yeah.
So, and those are beets over there. Are they beets, those
No,
pink
so
things?
those are
those?
some pickled turnips, beet pickled turnips. You know, not wrong.
Beet pickled turnips.
Yeah.
And what else is on? Yeah, pass them over to you. What's on that plate?
Fun little plate of different pickles from around the diaspora communities. Beet pickled turnips. You find a lot in falafel shops. And then a half sour pickle right there. I was very insistent on the half sour, not a 3/4 sour, not a full sour.
They're really pretty. Everything's pretty.
And then chocolate bakla from the Indian community is a pickle that's closest to you, the yellow looking ones with turmeric in there.
Beautiful. So explain briefly before you go, tell us about how you attempt to replicate a Reuben with a beet.
Well, they both are red.
Nice try, my friend.
So we take the beets and we cook them in a salty brine with flavors, some brown sugar, some Bragg's liquid aminos, trying to get a lot of that umami, that really scrumptious flavors in there. And then we let them sit overnight with some pastrami spice on them. The next day, we smoke them and let them dehydrate a little to get that more meaty texture. Slice it thin, and that gets put on some sandwich bread with Reuben stuff.
Boy, I can't wait to taste that either. That's spectacular.
So last question for me, as you just mentioned the diaspora communities, I was also looking at, I think, a piece our colleague James Bennett did, and there was this philosophical question that you guys were all talking about. What makes Jewish food different? Jewish food Jewish?
Jewish, right.
And considering the diaspora communities, how have you answered that question?
Well, I think we're always debating. There's never an answer to it. But something that I thought a lot about in creating this food is making it not food that Jews eat, but Jewish food. And to me, there's three things involved: time, constraint, and tradition. Time being the time it took to make the food, and a lot of that has to do with constraint of not being able to cook on the Sabbath, Friday night to Saturday night. So you'd have these long baked stews or breads that you'd throw in the oven and let it cook for a while.
So you can eat them on the Sabbath.
Exactly. Constraint is the laws of kosher, which is a big constraint for us, as well as we've adapted that to be what we can actually bring in. There's not very much infrastructure for kosher products. And the last is tradition, which, think Fiddler on the Roof tradition. It's Reuben's. It is having bread on the Sabbath. It's having all these foods that we traditionally eat for holidays, or we've done for thousands of years, and bringing it to our tables.
You sound like you've waited your whole life to do this. No, I don't mean both. But you are so intense in terms of this getting to the food thing. It's actually quite beautiful to listen to. Before you go, this has nothing. I know you're not a Jewish deli, but you are Jewish and you're serving food. I lived in New York City for 15 years. When I commuted here, when I would fly down to work, because I still worked in New York City the first year, I would fly to LaGuardia and I would stay at this dump of a hotel on 55th Street, because it was county corner from the Carnegie Delicatessen, and I would go to the Carnegie before I went to my hotel. With the exception of maybe Mamala's, I have to say our ability in Greater Boston to embrace the best of Jewish deli food is almost non-existent. Why do you think it's been so hard for a community with so many Jews, starting with you, Rabbi, to do what New York City and other places have done with Jewish delis?
I mean, I think it's like saying why is French food better in Paris, right? It's like that is the epicenter of where deli culture is from.
New York City.
New York City, yeah. the stories of immigration and industry there is what created deli culture. So I would say, like, we shouldn't try and replicate it. We should try and do something different, which is what Lair House is trying to do. We grab from deli culture, but we also are grabbing from this like much broader understanding of what Jewish food can be.
What's your explanation of this failure in Greater Boston? I know you wouldn't call it a failure. I'm calling it a failure. Go ahead.
I think it has a lot to do with the restaurant industry in Boston, the food scene in Boston, and what people are looking for. It's hard to get people to venture out and try something that they're not used to. And besides a Reuben, I don't see many people looking to have some sliced tongue sandwich or liverwurst or anything other than a Reuben and some pickles.
Let me tell you something. The next week, I'm going to eat a beet Reuben for the first time in my life at Lair House, and we shall see what we shall see.
Looking forward to seeing you.
Congratulations. Excellent. It's really exciting. We wish you a huge amount of luck and I hope to see you again. And thanks for bringing the food.
Thanks for having us. Thanks so much.
Food is fabulous. Thank you so much.
Good.
We have been speaking with Lair House co-founder Charlie Schwartz and executive chef Noah Klickstein. Thank you again. Coming up, Boston Globe columnist Marcela Garcia. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
And Walden Local Meat, partnering with
The path to medical school is still harder for students of color, says a new study, even though research shows that diversity in medicine is crucial for saving lives.
Black, Hispanic, and Native American students are more likely to have financial and educational barriers to applying to medical school. And even further, they're more likely to face discouragement from advisors.
That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Tools of the Mind, the research and play-based curriculum combines professional development and a comprehensive pre-K and K curriculum designed to build self-regulation skills. Learn more at toolsofthemind.org. And Walden Local Meat, partnering with local farmers in the Northeast. Walden Local Meat offers 100% grass-fed and pasture-raised meat delivered to your door. Learn more at waldenlocalmeat.com.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Marjorie again. Jim Braude and Jared Bowen. Marjorie's off for a couple of days. Jared is executive arts editor here at GBH. Thank you, Jared, for doing this. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. One omission, I feel bad. We didn't mention the address of the Lair House if you want to check it out. It's 425 Washington Street. It's right on the Somerville-Cambridge line across from Savinor's, sort of on the corner of Beacon and Washington. I can't wait to get there. Hope you check it out, too. We're joined now by Boston Globe columnist Marcela Garcia. Marcela, it's great to see you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
It's great to be back with you. We'll start with this story developing in media that Fox News has a rival that is a very well-funded rival. Tell us about it and what it's shaping up to be.
Yeah, Americano Media is a new upstart, I guess, a new startup of basically Spanish language news, and it's backed by very wealthy donors, and their mantra or their mission is to become the Fox News of Spanish language news, which I gotta say, if nothing else, is very, very shrewd and smart, because at the end of the day, we're talking about a huge amount of an audience that really has not been reached, and I think if nothing else, I mean, we could talk about the politics, we could talk about, what does it mean to be the Fox News of Spanish language, but fundamentally, I think it's a good business move to try to reach a large segment of the population. We're talking about the largest minority group in the country. It has been for 20 years, right? Latinos in this country, and in light of 2024, I think that's a major, major move. And politically, Democrats are falling a little behind, I think.
It's sort of, the growth is almost under the radar to some degree, not to you. But When I read the statistic for the first time, and correct me if I'm wrong, almost 100% of the population growth in Boston, for example, over the past 20 years comes from Latino population.
Immigrants,
Almost
yes.
100%.
Almost, right.
It's just, it's staggering.
Yeah.
One of the hosts on Americano Media, that's what it's called,
Correct.
right? Refers to their goal is to achieve Trumpismo. Is
Trumpismo,
how they
yeah.
describe it. And one of the things I know we've discussed with you and you've written about is Latino voting population is a very diverse, non-monolithic population in this country. Sort of break that down for us.
Yeah,
a little
so that's the other side of the coin here. That what do we mean when we talk about Latinos? It's an incredibly varied and diverse group, and so as such, they're very persuadable because. The Americano media piece is interesting because they know that the way they talk about it is that Latinos are conservative, they just don't know about it yet. But I go a step further, and I always say that Latinos don't know what they are, period, in terms of political identity, because no one has taken the time to reach out to them. It's also like voting strategy, like get out the vote strategy. They are persuadable because nobody has knocked on their doors. This is what happened in Florida, right? And so they're Guatemalans, they're Mexicans, and it also matters where in the country they are located. There's also geographic variation. There's Chicanos in California that has a very specific geographical meaning to that group, right? They're not Mexicans, they're not Latinos, they're Chicanos. They like to call themselves Chicano. You go to New York, for instance, you have Puerto Ricans, New Yorkers, you have the recent Venezuelan and Puerto Rican arrivals to Florida. You have the Cuban Americans in Florida. Again, all these very varied constituents mean something different.
Is there as much of now that they're trying to develop a conservative media infrastructure for the Latino population, you mentioned in your column there's a progressive alternative too. What's that and how's that doing?
So there's a network of radio stations in Florida that were traditionally right-wing, and they were bought by this conglomerate of Latino media people backed by a few groups, including, and again, this is a fact that conservatives love to talk about, backed by nonprofits funded with George Soros money.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, George Soros has a ton of initiatives, open source, blah, blah, blah. And they fund a lot of, progressive initiatives. And so they give money to a lot of Latino groups. And so part of it is funded through that. And so they always like to put it down. As you know, George Soros is a huge, huge figure among conservatives, like an evil figure. And so they're still trying to launch. To my knowledge, they haven't launched, but there is an effort. The thing about Republicans and conservatives, they're starting already. They're doing. That's the part that they've understood very well about Latinos is that you have to be there early and stay there. Whether you're talking about voters, whether you're talking about audiences, you want to earn their loyalty. And I think that's one thing about Americano media that they do understand, that they want to be there early with a very specific message and constantly tell them about it. And so I don't know if it's going to be successful, but so far they seem to be doing the right moves. They were facing a lot of criticism of misinformation, disinformation, but then they hired I don't know if it's a pro forma group or if it's really serious, to combat misinformation. And so it remains to be seen if it's real, if they really are interested in providing real news. Right now we're talking about Fox News, the Fox News of Spanish. Fox News is facing, a potential trial, defamation trial.
As we speak, they're on lunch break right now.
Correct. And so, whether that's going to be the same thing, it remains to be seen. But at the very least, I think it's remarkable that they are going that. It is a significant investment, significant.
What I'm struck by, in going back to the issue of persuasion and the cult of personality that we see works with Fox, who are they hiring to deliver these messages?
So they're hiring, basically, I think I saw that they hired a couple of people who had been in CNN before. They hired a former beauty contest winner from Venezuela, very, very pretty, which, for whatever it's worth, kind of like resonates with Latino audiences. Beauty contests in Latin America are a huge thing. And so
it resonates with white audiences in this country too.
Some white audiences.
Watch the cable networks.
Well, even in Fox News, that was always, the visual element. What's his face? Roger
Ailes.
Yeah, Roger Ailes had always this, for other reasons, right? But he always wanted to have pretty people on air.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, CNN is doing much the same thing.
Yeah, no,
in 2023.
totally.
It's not just.
I think in TV, that's what people want to see what you look like, and so they're hiring personalities. They're hiring
from credible sources.
From some credible sources, and listen. Every time I talk to Spanish language people here, immigrants, Latinos, who are not part of, say, the Globe readership, or don't listen to Boston Public Radio, I always ask them, where do you get their news? Where do you get their news? Inevitably, some might say, oh, Univision, the local Telemundo, but more and more they're saying YouTube, TikTok, which is, make of that what you will, but it is something. And so...
By the way, we're talking to a TikTok queen right here because of her damn dog.
Well, it's my dogs.
Sure
it's my dogs. It's my dogs.
How much have you made? Like $60? How much have you made so far?
Well, so far, the whole...
Yeah.
Like a couple hundred.
Wow, okay.
Since 2021, though. I mean, it's been a while.
You're making like $100 a year. That's not something to laugh about there.
I shouldn't talk about this because my husband said, don't say the money because then we have to report it.
On tax day. That's a really good
I'm
thing,
not going to
Marcel,
say that.
Talking about.
You can expense it in the dog toys, which are very expensive, so that's only a few dog toys.
I spent a lot of money on them. I'm coming out as a loser, obviously.
So, Marcelo Garcia, speaking of the diversity in the Latino community, which I think many casual observers don't think exists. You wrote a piece about Ron DeSantis and elevating his anti-immigrant position to an art form. You also mentioned 56% of Latinos in Florida, 56% voted for him in his most recent election against Charlie Crist, the Democrat.
Yeah. So this is a fact, not, again, speaking of facts that are not known about the last election, Ron DeSantis became the first Republican governor to win Miami-Dade County, which is
big-time Democrat
stronghold. And he did it largely, obviously, because of the Latino vote. I mean, Miami-Dade County is largely Latino, too. And so, again, going back to this strategy that Americano media is also using it is a replication of the Florida model, too. I mean, Ron DeSantis had a huge operation in Spanish, and they started early. And I'm sorry, but Democrats were totally asleep at the wheel. They came in later. They invested a ridiculous amount of money. And it wasn't, perhaps they felt that they were going to lose anyway. But they
ridiculously small amount of money. Is that what you meant?
Sorry.
Okay.
Not ridiculously big. Yeah, no, ridiculously small. And maybe they thought that it wasn't a race worth investing on because they knew that DeSantis was going to win. But people fail to account that the gains are really remarkable. I mean, because voters are loyal, If you earn their vote, as Ron DeSantis did, the campaign did, is it lost? Perhaps. And so it's really hard to overcome those gains. And the Republican Party, and Ron DeSantis in particular, made huge gains in Florida. And it's this messaging, constant messaging, knocking on doors, one-on-one conversations. And again, it's just hammering that message. And you and I know what the message is, woke, all the conservative talking points that you hear in Fox News is the same thing.
But the cruelty, which is the word that I think most generally applies in my mind to almost all the public policy of Ron DeSantis, didn't turn off Latino voters.
No, it didn't.
Shipping immigrants in Texas
did not.
On a plane with Florida tax money to Martha's Vineyard didn't turn off
No, there was
voters.
a poll. There was a poll done right after this happened in October. And Latinos were still in favor of DeSantis, despite, or perhaps because there is this sort of talking point, among Latinos that you have to do this the right way. You have to come the right way. I mean, it doesn't resonate with a lot, but it resonates with a fair amount of Latinos, and especially in Florida when you have this Cuban American, and so then there's the socialist talking points, the anti-communism talking points, that resonated there. And again, the DeSantis campaign was very smart about that because they went through that. They just hammered that message constantly. And no, it didn't have any impact, the Martha's Vineyard stunt. And so now he's trying to do this really, really draconian legislative package, which is probably going to pass because the Republicans control both chambers in the state legislature in Florida. It's probably going to get challenged in court, but they basically want to criminalize anybody, practically anybody who helps, aids, or comes in contact with an undocumented immigrant, which is really, really unprecedented. It's beyond criminalizing. There was a Catholic bishop put out a statement saying he criminalizes empathy, but I say it's beyond that. He criminalizes common sense because, as we all know, undocumented immigrants work in many, many jobs, especially in Florida, but where they are a big part of the population. And so it's kind of like also shooting themselves in the foot because it almost feels like just an exercise, sort of a symbolic exercise, because he knows this is going to get challenged in court, right? And so it's part of his whole campaign to run for president. He hasn't announced, but we all know he will.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. And to call back Americano Media for a moment, and if we're drawing the Fox News parallels, does he become their candidate?
Probably, or Trump, or not. It doesn't. I don't think it matters that matters yet. They will be like Fox News, probably, in the sense that some of their personalities, on-air people, are pro-Trump, and then they have some anti-Trump people. But by and large, I honestly don't know what will be worse, a DeSantis or a Trump candidacy for presidents. But it will be interesting to see how that plays out in the airways on Americano Media.
How has Biden in 2 years performed? So I think that's the answer to the question. How's he performed for Latino voters?
It's really a mixed record because I feel like he goes, one step forward, 2 steps back, and it depends on what we're talking about. There's obviously a lot of issues, but say immigration, right? Or let's talk about child labor. There was a huge. I'm sure you guys are aware, a huge New York Times
another
report.
One this morning.
And another one this morning. That's what I was going to refer to. That there's a huge influx of minor migrant children who are working all over the country, right? And today there was this new report that showed that the White House, the Biden administration, knew that this was happening and let it happen. And to me, that is unconscionable. And so how can you say that? I don't really know what his message is going to be when he runs for re-election, but all of this is going to come out, of course. And so, again, when you ask about how is he doing, it's a really, really mixed bag. And it's almost like he talks, through both sides of his mouth. And he's trying to walk this very fine line. It's almost impossible. Like either you are for it or you don't. How do you ignore warnings that there are companies potentially abusing or exploiting child labor? We have laws about this.
By the way, one of your colleagues in the Boston Globe, every time I read a story like this, I think the average person in a place like this says, as horrible as that is, that's down there. That's over there. Brilliant reporting by your colleagues in the Boston Globe show it's right here.
Katie Johnson,
Katie Johnson. It's happening right here
in New Bedford. Yeah, she did a report in the fisheries in New Bedford that there's child labor, potentially exploited. And then in Maine, there was a recent case that I also wrote about
tell us about this. Yeah.
So recently in Maine, there was this big. I feel like this case happened like completely upside down, the way it should be, the way it should happen, or the way some of these things should evolve. So there was a house, they called it a stash house, where 17 migrants were found living. And so the Border Patrol, because as you know, in Maine, the Border Patrol has presence because of the northern border with Canada. And they did this big operation. They detained the 17 migrants, and they said, they've been living here because they've been working for a Massachusetts-based company who, rented the house for them. And so we hear nothing about what this Massachusetts company is. We hear nothing about what's happening to the 17 migrants. And what I mean when I said earlier that this happened the wrong way is that what should have happened in this case is that, and again, going back to the Biden administration, the Biden administration recently released new guidelines. What do you do when you find potential labor violations? You call the worker protection authorities, and there's the U.S. Department of Labor, there's OSHA, there's the U.S. Attorney General's office. There are many agencies that should have been involved here.
And you go after the employer.
And you go after the employer with the cooperation of the employees. You protect the worker because they're being exploited. And instead, it happened the other way around, in which the workers were criminalized. And so this Maine case, everyone has been talking about the Maine case. It really is a Massachusetts case because I spoke with family members of two of the migrants, and they're from Lawrence. And so what they told me is that they would get picked up in Lawrence, and then on Monday, they would be driven to Maine to work. It was apparently, again, this is all alleged, construction company. They would be driven there, and so that they wouldn't have to be driving back and forth every day, they rented the house for them, where they would stay Monday through Friday. And so to this day, I have asked every single agency potentially involved. No one wants to say anything. We don't know the name of the company yet.
Why? That's why you wrote 2 columns in which you highlight that they haven't identified the company. I don't understand that.
Me neither. Even if there's an investigation, you know how they always say, we cannot reveal anything because there's an investigation. They won't even say that. We cannot deny or confirm that there's an investigation right now. You know how that language is. And I don't know why, honestly. There may very well be an investigation, and I sure hope there is one. But for it to be an investigation, you have to have the cooperation of the workers. You have to interview. And to the best of my knowledge, I haven't been able to confirm whether that happened yet or not. Maybe the Department of Labor is in the process of reaching out to. I know that some of them are in detention, which seems harsh because, again, if you want the corporation to go after the company, why would you keep them in detention? So it's really, really a bad case, but it also highlights where the Biden administration is really not following what they're supposed to be doing and saying. They totally they announced a new approach. You know, when they came into office, we're going to focus on labor exploitation. We're not going to do the thing that we used to do before. Remember the worksite raids where they would just round up hundreds of migrants and then just
including in New Bedford, I think.
Remember
Speaking
that?
of New Bedford,
yes,
right.
Remember that. And that was major. It was like dozens of migrants. And so if you're saying that that's your new approach and that you're focusing on labor exploitation, that's not what we saw happen in Maine. And so I plan to continue following up. The people are very scared to talk. Well, that's the other thing.
What is the status of those migrant workers? You mentioned that some of them are in detention centers. Can you not find out to the family members, or are they not hearing?
They're not No, they're not hearing anything. Like it's very, when I report on migrants or about this, immigrants potentially in detention or being detained, caught up in an operation like this, they're very reluctant to talk to the media. Very, very reluctant. So I've been in touch with one of the families, but they don't want to talk. All they want is their family member who is detained to be released. But I can't really do anything, to help them if I don't get more information. And so I think that they are in touch with some advocates. And so now that the advocates know that this is more of a Massachusetts case, I think there's going to be more involvement from advocates in order to push and to find out more, like you said.
Can we spend the last couple of minutes on an upbeat story after all these bad news stories? Who's Hilda Ramirez?
So Hilda Ramirez, she is one of the recent or newest hires by the Red Sox.
She hates baseball.
She hates baseball, but she was just recently hired by the Red Sox to be their player development education coordinator. Her job is basically to assist or service, if you will, the needs of their Latino players. This is in Florida, in Fort Myers. The Red Sox have this complex there. And so I think this is a reflection or a result of the pipeline of minor league players that all teams have that comes directly from Latin America. All of the teams have an academy in the Dominican Republic, right? I knew that they had presence, but I didn't know that every single team had an academy in the Dominican Republic. And so they've signed the kids and they put them through the system, and they realized that they needed a person like Hilda to get them to get an ID, put them on English classes, teach them how to open a bank account, a social security number, all these things that come with just living in America, right? That they don't know about because they're young, 17, 16. And that means that they have been in a baseball academy at 14, 15, sometimes leaving school. And so it is a major challenge. This is happening in every single Major League Baseball team. But the Red Sox just hired her, and so she's sort of trying to develop a system to educate Latino players who, again, don't even know English. They know everything they have to know about baseball. And so that's what struck me as interesting, that she does not need to care about baseball, but she does now because she wants to relate to her students, or mentees, as she called them.
You know what I was thinking when I was reading this story? I love the story about her that you wrote, by the way.
Thanks.
Is, what we forget is when you see a young person in a uniform, and especially if it's a sport where their head is covered, or they have a baseball hat, or they have padding on it, and you cheer for them, you forget that so many of them are kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are in the minor leagues 18, 19 years old, in the major leagues maybe as young as 21 or 22. And and they're in a new country.
Yeah.
Often using a primary language is one they're not familiar with. And so it's so obvious that there was a need, and it's great that somebody like that is
it's now
filling the hole.
working in the Red Sox. So yeah, I think she's starting to like baseball, but she's someone that I knew. She used to be a member of the Worcester School Committee. She's been involved in education, and so that's what I liked about this story, that it isn't about baseball, but it kind of is. It's more about education and new immigrants, if you will.
Worcester School Committee. So
She was she was a member of the Worcester School Committee. So.
Is this pretty unusual in the baseball world?
I would think so.
No, I don't think so. Don't you think they? I mean,
well, now,
Latin players are so huge.
But before, it was a role that was filled by somebody in the organization, and it was very sui generis. Like, it wasn't something that was institutionalized.
Yeah.
Now it has been institutionalized. And so I think that's what I like about this position at the Reds, is that they have this role, period. It's not a coach, it's not a family member, it's someone with background in education. And also, she has a background in mentorship, youth mentorship, which is also a huge part of it. Because they're here without their families, so that's also another element.
We should try to get her on the show. That's
You
great.
totally
That's a
would.
great
You
story.
totally should. You
Love
totally
that.
should.
Great to see you. Thanks so
You
much.
too.
As
Thanks
always.
for
I
having
really
me.
appreciate it.
Good
Thank
to see you. We have been speaking with Boston Globe columnist Marcela Garcia. Coming up, CNN's John King, just as the Dominion Fox News trial gets underway. You're listening to Boston Public Radio.
The Wait Stand Up Tour is coming to Boston, and GBH has your tickets. Hosted by Wait regular Alonzo Bowden, join us for a night of stand-up comedy featuring some of Wait Don't Tell Me's funniest panelists. It's all happening on April 28th at the Chevalier Theater in Medford. Support your GBH listening and enjoy an evening of laughs with the clever and insightful panelists of Wait Don't Tell Me. Tickets and more info at gbh.org/waitwait.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Multiverse Concert Series, presenting Black Hole Symphony, created in partnership with the Museum of Science, a symphonic journey through global companies make moves for their businesses. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/banking-for-business.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Jared Bowen sitting in for Marjorie, and we're streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Joined now on Zoom by CNN's John King. John is CNN's chief national correspondent, host of Inside Politics, which you can catch weekdays at noon. Hello there, John.
Happy busy Tuesday.
And to you.
It is a busy Tuesday, so we'll start with the Dominion Fox trial, which not only is underway, but seems to be moving at a rapid clip already. We understand that they'll be on lunch until 1:30 and then launch into it again. What do we know that's happening right now?
They have a jury, which is a big deal. There was a one-day pause yesterday, and the speculation was maybe there were going to be some last-minute settlement talks, but clearly, if that was the case, Jared, it didn't work out. So it's a $1.6 billion defamation case. Dominion says it is eager to prove its case. Fox says it has First Amendment rights and they can't. But you have a jury. There was a little bit of an argument this morning, each side disputing some of the slides the other team was going to use in their opening statements. But our reporter on the scene says that has been resolved. And so when they come back from lunch, you're going to have opening statements and we get underway. This could take a couple weeks, maybe even more, but it has the potential for Rupert Murdoch to be on the stand, for Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Maria Bartiromo and more of the Fox personalities who lied to their viewers and to the American people about the election to be on the stand. It's a high legal bar for defamation, but I think we're going to learn a lot about how this happened during this trial, regardless of who wins. And I'm fascinated to see what happens.
John, I'm a hyperbolic guy and I plead guilty, but I said earlier in the show, it's maybe the biggest media trial in decades in this country. It is, isn't it?
I certainly can't think of anything as consequential. Number one, it's a big number. Number two, it's about American democracy and what has become, Jim, we've talked about this so many times, the decaying of trust in our institutions. Yeah. And this is more John King from Dorchester. I'm not sure if John King from CNN is allowed to say this, but Fox's active, willing, even eager role in helping to undermine trust in institutions, trust in a thing as basic as math. I'm sorry, it's math. Joe Biden won. Yes, I think in my memory, absolutely the biggest media trial that I can remember in my adult life. And I just think that it's not just about Fox. And and anyone out there thinking the CNN guy is beating up on Fox, I hope you don't think of it that way. I don't think of it that way. This is the profession we all work in. I get that primetime Fox is different from how I view journalism, as is primetime MSNBC. But in terms of how to cover an election, or the commitment all of us should have to basic truth, basic math, and law and order and rules in democracy, they helped create this climate that we're still paying a price for.
John, before we leave this, Marjorie has asked repeatedly in anticipation of the trial, will Fox News even cover the trial about Fox News? Do you have any indication as to whether or not they are?
I was watching this morning. I was watching yesterday when they had the delay. I was watching one day last week when there was a big news made by the judge about the tone and things that could be allowed. And I was watching this morning before I went up to my office. It's not complete, Jim, so I'm not absolutely sure about this. But I saw it. I have a screen in my house. It has Fox Business in my office. I mean, Fox Business, MSNBC, and CNN. It's right there. It's 5 feet away from me. I did not see one piece of coverage on either Fox or Fox Business. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
I understand.
They're certainly not playing it up like they play up other things.
Last for me on this, we have seen so much coverage about this. It seems so much written about the strength of Dominion's case here. How prepared should we be for surprises that Fox can bring forward on their end?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, and so I don't want to say that this is a cut and dry case or a slam dunk case. I think it's a slam dunk case that they knew they were lying. Their own text messages in between the anchors about how, the things they said about Donald Trump, disparaging his lawyers, saying they knew it was a crock of you-know-what. So I don't think there's any question that they, for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and you could argue months and months and months and months, continued to put guests on TV and to say things themselves that they knew not to be true. Can you prove defamation? That's a legal question I'm not qualified to answer. But I wish they would cover it, and I wish that Trump voters, Republicans, independents who are skeptical of our business, I hope that you'll read in a place you trust, read the trial coverage, because I think we need to shake the skepticism out of people. This is not a perfect business by far, but what they did, in my view, is just reprehensible, and I think we're going to learn a lot about it. The legal test of defamation, Jared, I'll leave that to the judge and the lawyers.
So, John King, every time we on the show mention the debt ceiling, I assume we lose about 98% of our audience, but I'm going to do it anyway. Could you explain? I am guessing that the average person, if they were stopped and say, what is the debt ceiling about? Many of them would say, I have no idea. And those who think they have an idea would say, well, this is about whether or not we're going to deal with future spending in this country and rein in extravagant spending so we don't have deficits, while in fact it's not about that at all. Could you explain what it is about and what the status of this stalemate between the House Republicans and the White House is?
What it's about is paying your car loan or paying your credit cards. It's for money you've already spent or commitments you've already made. So some of the
Republicans and Democrats.
Republicans and Democrats, and so is during the Trump administration they were paying. The debt, raising the debt ceiling was to pay bills that Obama had racked up, and even some of them are long-term programs. Even before that, on the tape, most of the debt that that's coming due now was racked up before Joe Biden came to office. Does that mean you can't have a conversation about spending levels under the Democratic president? Of course not. Of course not. What the president says is let's do that separately, that we have a responsibility to pay our bills, that our credit rating is on the line. Just think about it that way, your credit score, right? You go on Experian or one of the other places and get your credit score. This is the United States government's credit score at risk here. And the president says, let's pass a clean debt ceiling increase, meaning give the government the authority to borrow more money. We'll pay our bills. And then let's have a conversation about spending priorities. And the House, it's a narrow House Republican majority, but they did win the election. They did take over the House. They do have some say, some leverage in this conversation. Right now, it's an argument over process, how to have the cuts conversation. They want to do it as part of the debt ceiling, but they had a setback just today, Jim. The real deadline, late May, early June. But Kevin McCarthy has been saying he has a plan. He brought it to his conference this morning, and moderate members, conservative members, Freedom Caucus members, Republican Study Group members, everybody came out saying, I have questions. I'm not sold on to this yet. So he can only afford to lose 4 votes on the floor. He's nowhere close to having even a unified Republican position to start the negotiations. It's not a final position. It's just here's where we want to begin the conversation with President Biden. So right now, the president has released his budget. The president has said, clean debt ceiling, then I'll talk spending cuts. So the ball right now is in the House Republicans' court, and at the moment, they have some time, but at the moment, they don't have their act together.
Can I talk about the other party in the House for a minute? I think I asked you a similarly naive question during the speakership fight, which after whatever was 15 ballots went to McCarthy. If there were 5 Republicans in the House who said this is too important to mess with the retirement accounts and everything else of my constituents, even though, ideologically I may be with McCarthy, is it past the laugh test to think that 5 Republicans would join the Democrats and do something closer to what Biden wants so that this cliff is not jumped off of, or whatever the appropriate verb is?
I would say that's something to keep an eye on as we get into next month, as Memorial Day approaches, and you're really at that point. The more moderate House Republicans, you could find 4 or 5 of them just in New York State, for example. You could find some in other parts of the country. They certainly don't want to go off the fiscal cliff, and they don't want to be blamed even if you get close to the debt ceiling and financial markets start jumping around. At the moment, though, they do say that as a matter of Republican principle, they'd like to go on the record saying they want some spending cuts. And so they agree with the Republican strategy to try to demand that at the start of the negotiations. Does it mean at the end they wouldn't agree, let's raise the debt ceiling because we have a public commitment from the president to then have a conversation about spending cuts? So I think we're not there yet, but I think that's something to keep an eye on. The other thing to watch, though, Jim, is the House Republicans, wherever they are on the ideological spectrum, are counting on some Senate Democrats like Joe Manchin, who's up for re-election next year. In a state Trump won overwhelmingly. John Tester up in a state Trump won overwhelmingly. They're counting on some of the more moderate, vulnerable Senate Democrats to say, let's have a conversation about spending cuts. For now, the president has kept them loyal on let's do it in 2 tracks. Let's not do it together. We'll do it in 2 tracks. But there's still a lot of pages to turn in this before we get to the end.
We're talking to CNN's John King.
So ProPublica has done this amazing reporting that we have seen about what justices on the Supreme Court have accepted. More and more seems to be coming out about Clarence Thomas. There are calls, not action, about investigating him. Where does that stand as we learn that he has accepted a huge number of gifts, had these financial arrangements with properties and so on?
He has agreed now to amend his financial disclosure forms to disclose a real estate transaction that should have been disclosed years and years ago. The law is pretty clear on that one. Some of this is ambiguous. Can you accept gifts from a friend, even if that friend happens to be a billionaire who supports conservative causes? Unfortunately, and there are some people who disagree with me who say you don't need a clearer ethics policy at the United States Supreme Court. I would argue, again, going back to the skepticism we were just talking about in the Fox conversation, given all the doubts about institutions, the lack of trust in politicians, government bodies, including the courts, why can we all just agree, forget your party, let's have transparency. Everybody has to disclose how much they make if you want to take a position like that. Everybody has to disclose if you're trading stocks. Everybody has to disclose if you're taking gifts, if you're in a position where you can influence national policy. or if you're having this conversation at the state level. That should be easy, yet it's not in the polarized world we live in. Senate Democrats say they want to look into this. The justice says he will amend his financial disclosure forms. Most Republicans are rolling their eyes at the idea that you need to pass a tougher ethics policy for Supreme Court justices. I've said this too many times, so you can laugh at me, but I wish we would have an adult conversation about this, just in the idea that it's a lifetime appointment. The American people, they're paying the salaries. They are dealing with the political impacts, whether you agree or disagree with overturning Roe v. Wade, whether you agree or disagree with environmental rulings from the Supreme Court. It is your life this court affects. And so don't you deserve to know at least enough? You don't have to know everything. We don't need to pry into family secrets or every little transaction. But if you're taking outside money from somebody, shouldn't that be publicly disclosed? Why is that a hard one? But for many people in this town, it is.
You said a minute ago, some people disagree with you that there should be tighter ethical standards. I assume you're talking about Ginny Thomas. I don't know anybody else who would disagree.
A number of Republican senators, a number of senior Republican senators have said just in the last 24 to 36 hours, we don't see a need for for new rules.
John, we have Senator Whitehouse, who's one of our favorites on these issues and dark money. He's going to be with us next Friday at the library on Zoom, I think, from Rhode Island. Both he and he's in the chair of the subcommittee, I think, that deals with the federal courts. There's obviously Dick Durbin from Illinois, Senator, chair of the Judiciary Committee. Right after the first of now 3 disclosures about what you're not calling corruption, I would call corruption on the part of Clarence Thomas, they talked about holding hearings. They talked about filing legislation that would mandate that there be some sort of ethical structure that oversees the Supreme Court. Is anything happening, or was this just blowing hot air for a day and that's the end of it?
No, I think Senate Democrats, and you should put the question to Senator Whitehouse, who's quite passionate about this.
I know he is.
I think Senate Democrats do plan to have hearings. I think some Senate Democrats do plan to introduce legislation. However, it's a 51-49 Senate. And Senator Feinstein is still not here. Right. Well, the Democrats don't have the votes to advance on the floor any major legislation. And I don't think, they need 10 votes, right? They have to get to 60 to get that through. So we'll see. And then the argument is, well, even if we passed it in the Senate, it's a Republican House. They're not going to pass it. I'm sure Senator Whitehouse will say, too bad. We should do it anyway. Even if we cannot pass a new policy, let's bring public attention.
Exactly. Like the January 6th committee, essentially, right. I would argue. So, John, right. Before you leave, can we change to a lighter subject? I taped yesterday's Red Sox game, sort of in honor of you. I think people know John is maybe the biggest Red Sox game. I was with Deval Patrick, by the way, last week at his class at the Kennedy School. He had to throw out the first pitch at the Marathon Day game yesterday in total panic that he was going to bounce it to home plate, and we've been unable to find out how he did. But I taped the game yesterday purely to see Ohtani from Los Angeles Angels, who some people think is maybe the greatest baseball player who ever lived. For those who don't know, I think since Babe Ruth. Has anybody been that good a pitcher and a hitter all in one? What's your sense of this guy?
Oh, he's breathtaking. A revelation and a revolutionary player in the sense that it's an inspiration, whatever, to play both ways in your sport, right? We've become so specialized in society that everybody, you're either this or you're that. You don't play both ways. He's a free agent at the end of this year. I hope he loved Fenway Park. I hope he loved the history. And I hope when some of the members of the 2013 team were around yesterday, the Red Sox have a good tradition of Japanese players, including critical players like Koji Uehara and others. I hope they talk to him about how great a city of Boston is, because that wall is made for his swing, number one, and to see that would be a dream. But just as an athlete, I'm a Red Sox fan, of course, but as an athlete to watch him, it's simply breathtaking. He's a 1 in a million, if not a 1 in a billion.
For people who think that baseball is too dull a sport, I would make one recommendation. I often feel that way too, even though I love that it's sped up. The end of the World Baseball Classic between Japan and the United States. For those who don't know, there were 2 players involved in the final out. Both from Los Angeles Angels teammates. Mike Trout, who some people think is the greatest baseball player ever, maybe not just now. The guy pitching to his teammate for Japan was Ohtani, and the game depended on the resolution of that at bat. Was that one of the most exciting handful of minutes you've ever seen in a sport, John King?
I watched it with my 11-year-old, and we were glued shoulder to shoulder. It was just breathtaking. And I think Trout is, if not, the greatest player of all time, one of the top 10 of all time. To see Ohtani and Trout on a team that just can't find a way to win right now, Again, I'm a Red Sox fan, but you just cringe for athletes like that. You want them to experience the championship. And the fact that, now they're on the same team, right? But they love the game and they love the history of the game. So they share that moment. Mike Trout wishes it went differently, but they will forever share just a remarkable global moment.
It's great. Check it out online. John, it's great to see you. Thanks for your time as always. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys. See you next week.
John King.
Thank you so much. We've been speaking with CNN's John King. He's chief national correspondent and host of Inside Politics, which you can catch weekdays at noon. Coming up, we'll open up the lines to talk about the AI artificial intelligence creep. Not that photo Jamie made of Jim eating a sandwich in Paris, the ever-expanding presence of artificial intelligence in every aspect of our daily lives.
The fight for fat acceptance and the movement to ban weight discrimination is growing across the country. A new bill is being considered by the New York City Council to ban bias based on one's weight in employment, housing, and other areas. I'm Janae Pierre, in for Melissa Harris Perry. And that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Hebrew Senior Life, a Harvard Medical School affiliate empowering seniors to reach their full potential through senior living, healthcare, aging research, and more. You can consider Hebrew Senior Life at allweareforyou.org. And Rockland Trust Bank, dedicated to providing advice and support to the community for over 115 years. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Jared Bowen is sitting in for Marjorie, who's off a few days. We decided to end the show with a topic that has both Jared and me worked into a frenzy. If you've been listening to the show in the past couple of weeks, you'll know that our lead producer, that's Jamie, seems to apparently not have enough work to do, asking AI to produce photos of me doing all sorts of things like walking a dog or eating a sandwich in Paris. It's all fun and games until the AI, replaces him, which might not be that far off. It feels like AI's proliferation, every aspect of our lives, has accelerated so rapidly in the months since ChatGPT was unleashed on the public in November. Listen to this, by the way. The number of users of ChatGPT reached 100 million in 2 months. It took TikTok 9 months to reach that number. It took Instagram 2.5 years to reach that number. So we want to know, are you comfortable consuming art, music, scripted TV, virtually everything, if it was generated with the help of, or maybe exclusively by, artificial intelligence? Our number is 877-301-8097. Can you tell the stories most recently in the news on the AI front, Jared Bowen?
So there are a couple of stories. One is a repeat of a story we talked about last summer where an artist submitted a piece of work to, in that case, it was the Colorado State Fair, only to reveal later that it was actually created by artificial intelligence, an algorithm, but he won the top prize. And now it has just happened again with the photography. If you're watching on YouTube or you're seeing here at the library, you'll see this photograph. A man entered this competition. He won. He did this very intentionally because he wanted to spark debate and provoke people to understand the nature of AI and what can be done, that he can use it to create a photograph that he didn't actually take himself and win the top prize in a very established and very revered competition, photography competition. So we're seeing this. We're seeing a song by Drake, which I think we can play, that isn't actually a song by Drake, that was created by somebody using artificial intelligence. In fact, we should probably play a little bit of it now.
I came in with my ex like Selena, the flex, bumping Justin Bieber, the fever and left, she know what she need, or I need
Drake without Drake, that is.
And so somebody can take his voice or an approximation of his voice and send it out into the world. And so everything is changing literally second by second in this epic pace.
How has everybody not worked into a frenzy? First of all, it's one of the most beautiful photographs I ever saw. And had the guy, who's a famous German photographer, from what I understand, not disclosed after he won the contest that it was AI generated, that would have been the winning photograph
Absolutely.
in this international competition.
To your point, why is everybody not talking about this? The photography competition didn't want to talk about it. They were irritated that he did this, that he used them for this little exercise. I found tremendous value in this exercise because it gets everybody to more fully realize the capabilities of this again, very rapidly advancing technology.
You know, when this whole technology was fairly primitive, I don't know, was it 5 years ago? We talked on the show about the first deep fake I had ever seen. I assume most people remember. It was done by some right-wingers of Nancy Pelosi giving a speech or talking, and they changed the timing of her speech to make it appear that she was intoxicated when she did it. And unless you looked at it knowing in advance it was a fake, can you tell it's a fake? If you didn't have that information in advance, I don't think you would have known. I think you would have said, boy, that's pretty horrible. The Speaker of the House was drinking before she did her thing. How is somebody 4 or 5 years later not worried about the fact that whether it's a photograph, a song, a political commercial, an essay in a newspaper that you find appealing, somebody's book, a painting in that competition in college, how are people not totally free? We talked to Andy Anako, who I really respect on tech issues, maybe 3 weeks ago about this. I said, are you not worried that there was a number of experts, I think MIT and elsewhere, were saying there should be a 6-month pause on the technology while the regulatory bodies try to get caught up. It's not necessary, says Andy, don't worry about it. It's not going to get away from us. I would argue it's already gotten away from us, no?
I would argue the same thing. I don't know how everybody's not very concerned at this point. Look at the recent Kevin Roose articles in the New York Times, the op-ed pieces about his interaction with AI and how it's gone rogue. That's
where the AI said, you're not happy with your wife, right. Why aren't you with me, all this sort of stuff.
And it took very little effort for him to make it go off the rails, to do things that its programmers hadn't designed. But it's even gone beyond the fact that people are using this. It's now being baked into institutions. So if people aren't following, there's probably going to be a major writer's strike in Hollywood coming up. So the Writers Guild of America has actually baked in AI to their upcoming contract. So, for instance, if AI writes a script and then they come in as a script doctor, they'll get first writing approval. It's also allowing them to get a first writing credit, get a first writer credit, even if they bring AI into the screenwriting process. They're already confirming this in contracts that they will be using AI to write what we're going to be seeing.
Right,
on
they
film
may be
and television.
nothing. The author who will get credit may be doing nothing more than editing what AI has presented.
Yeah.
You know, by the way, I'm going to look again. If you're watching online or you're here at the library, this is an incredibly beautiful photograph.
Yeah.
And again, no one would have known, at least in a finite period of time, that was not a genuine photograph had the photographer not disclosed after he was awarded the prize. To me, it's terrifying. But apparently, Jared and I are the outliers. We'll see how you guys feel. Ellen in the car, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Hi.
I feel like there's nothing to build on.
What do you mean?
So humanity is built upon people learning and people trying and people discovering, and then the next person who comes along takes that and builds upon it. This AI is saying everything that it has ever mattered has already happened, and we're just going to scramble it. And we're going to tell you what we think. It has no critical thinking. It has nothing to build on. It has no way of humanity coming into the human existence.
Well, Ellen, some people may think that's an
do,
overstatement. I don't, but I want you to know that what Ellen is describing, I think accurately, this is 6 months old. ChatGPT was November of last year. It was not 11 years ago. In 6 months, we've gotten to... So how nervous are you about this, Ellen?
I'm very nervous because I think that when you stunt the growth of humankind, you stunt the world.
Wow. Okay, Ellen, thank you.
And we're all going to be stuck in what we already have.
Ellen, thanks for the call.
So
we appreciate it.
The counter argument to this, as I learned when I did that, I go back to, for me, what is now kind of a seminal moment when I experienced AI and was immersed in AI for the first time at the MIT Museum.
Oh, you talked to us. Explain what you did.
I sat down at a machine and I wrote a poem with AI, and nearby there was a deep fake video of President Nixon giving the speech about the moon landing going catastrophically wrong. Of course, that never happened, but you couldn't tell that it wasn't really a speech made because the deep fake videos are so fine. But when I sat down to write that poem with AI, the curator pointed out that this is a moment that might draw out more creativity from me. So if I use the AI to be my prompt, it's going to have me further reach into my own creative pool to do this. I don't necessarily agree with this. I kind of understood the point more on that day. 6 months later, I'm terrified by where this is all headed, and I think Ellen has encapsulated this beautifully, that what is going to be the impetus to continue to create if we have something to rely on always. You can go, if you're having trouble writing a chapter, you go to AI. You're having trouble writing something, finding a way to communicate in front of an audience, you go to AI. You're having trouble being on a radio show, have it devise your thought for that day.
Eric in Bedford, welcome to the show. Hi, Eric.
Hi.
Hey.
Nice to thank you very much. And
Thank you.
I called in before on this. I just wanted to reinforce that I believe AI is beautiful and will be amazing, and that we humans just need to work together to responsibly train AI as it grows.
How do we do that?
That's one of the biggest, most important questions of our time, Jim, and I don't know the answer.
Well,
it's getting people to work together well.
Eric, do you really see that the people, as in the globe, is going to come together? All of these different countries, all of humanity is going to come together to devise moral guidelines for AI?
Well, I think either we wake up or we're in a lot of trouble. It's, to me, I'm not saying I believe in this kind of stuff, but let's say we suddenly get attacked by space aliens. For an example, I think we'd start to come together.
Well, I would argue we're being attacked by climate change, an existential threat. How are we doing to coming together, Eric?
Well, you've done an amazing job over the last few years by raising awareness and getting people upset. Now, is the job done? No. And are we reacting fast enough? No, I don't know. But what can I do to help you with that?
Well, I hope your attitude is right, and I hope leaders appreciate the threat. My fear is they will publicly appreciate the threat and urge that all other countries come to the table while they are working hard behind the scenes to get a head start on everybody else. But I hope you're right and I'm wrong. Eric, thanks for your call yet again. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. I also think, and I speak for myself here, this is not, we are a lazy society. And the appeal of literally or figuratively sitting on your couch and have the work that should take blood, sweat, and tears or brain power done by a artificial intelligence is really appealing. I mean, it means you have more time to go out and have a drink, more time to watch a baseball game, more time to go out on a day. I'm serious about this, by the way. The lure in a time-crushed society to get what people will delude themselves into thinking is purely assistance in addressing the needs of their life is really, it's terrifying. It's really, to me, it's terrifying.
And with this, the vacuum that we're seeing in various areas, we know that AI can step in to be the role of a journalist because it can ask questions and it can create thought. We know it can
By the
step
way,
in
AI
to be
is
a
already,
doctor.
they're already writing short pieces for newspapers around the country. You know
and
that.
speeches,
Yeah.
as we have seen in experiments, but they can be doctors, they can evaluate and diagnose, they can be lawyers, they can process law and spit out decisions or levels of defense, they can be teachers. We talked about this in Maine. There was already at least one school district that was starting to rely on AI. It can go into all of these arenas, and I'm not sure that people completely understand that we're talking more about just science fiction here.
You know, one last thing before we get back to the calls. One of the unfunny jokes that Marjorie and I told for the ages that we talked about this, even before ChatGPT, is the joke you're supposed to tell is, oh, it's fine until they become talk radio hosts. And it's, by the way, it's not funny, and we say it anyway. I have no idea why. It's not preposterous. I mean, when you read that, what's that guy's name from the New York Times? Kevin what?
Kevin Roose.
When you see his interaction with AI about his personal situation, when you hear Andy Ihnatko yesterday talk about how Google's going to change to tailor what your information request is by chatting with you back and forth, it is not preposterous at all to think there are shows already that have guests that are AI, that have hosts that are AI, and you can tell all the stupid jokes you want about that, but it's not preposterous at all, you know?
It is not, and I'm very concerned, and this is why I posed this question to our last caller, because the people I've spoken with already about this, including most recently Tom Friedman, I spoke with him for Boston Speaker Series, of course, the New York Times columnist. Well, he calls this the Promethean moment, meaning we know how life changed on this planet when fire was introduced and how quickly it changed, and this is as immediate, and we see everything changing, but he also acknowledges that we are so far behind the ball in getting the global community to come together to figure out how they're going to control this.
You know who could use some AI? My daughter. I'm just looking at my phone. It's 1:52. What do I do at 1:52 every day?
Wrap up a show?
I do a radio show live. Do you think she knows that? Apparently not. Let's go to Lisa in the car. She's calling me right now. Well, texting would be fine. She's calling me at 1:52. If you're listening, honey, give it 10 minutes. Lisa in a car, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Lisa, what's up?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi there.
Hi there.
So I am definitely of the mindset that I'm terrified of AI, but there are two areas where I think it is fantastic. One is early detection of like medical, like say cancer.
That's a good point. That's a good one.
When the human eye can't find it. And the other is going back to media and news programs. Maybe the AI would just, look at an event in a war and tell us the event, not offer a political bias to it or anything. Just give us the news.
Well, a variation on that theme, if you want to find something positive, and I've embraced none of the positive, but you make some good points, is how about instantaneous fact-checking in debates, in speeches, and that sort of thing, which, for example, cable news tries to do, but there's always a lag time. This would cause the lag time to disappear. So even if there are some positive uses, the health one is the most exciting to me. Does all the rest not make you anxious?
Oh, I'm very anxious. Yes, I am terrified. I believe those iRobots and Terminators and all those movies, that those things could possibly happen.
Lisa in a car, thank you so much. Can we go down to number 5? Because I know this woman, and she's a pretty celebrated writer, and it'd be interesting to hear what her take is on this. Charlotte in Gloucester, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi. I was very scared when I heard about what was going to be happening with AI and student papers. I'm also a professor. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to let you know, I thought maybe this would calm you and Jared down, that we've been able to tell when the kids are using AI. Like, it's gobbledygook, it's a mess. So it just occurred to me that we also have to learn, we're on a learning curve of learning how to use AI. And it's not like we often hear about these perfect works of art that are made by AI, but our students are struggling to, pass their papers off as their own. It's just clearly not written by them. And by the way, many, many facts are wrong.
Well, but I know there's software programs that allow you to do what you're describing, but how about if they don't try to replace their own work 100%, Charlotte, but use it as the foundation, and essentially all they do is become editors rather than writers? Does that not concern you?
It does concern me, but we haven't reached that point yet. At least our students aren't equipped yet to do that. So although they are using some of their own material in their papers, it's still very disorganized. As one of my colleagues said, this paper is worse with AI than without. So they're integrating their own words. They're not able to edit AI yet. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think that I'm hoping that we're going to bring AI directly into the classroom and talk about how to use it. And maybe they're going to learn how to be better writers.
Wow.
Well, Charlotte, if you can indulge my hysteria for just a moment, just give it 4.5 weeks, and I'm sure there'll be, version 4.0 of ChatGPT will have figured it out by then. That's what's concerning me now, is how quickly it's developing. And again, if you read some of these columns, it is developing at a very rapid clip. I totally understand it needs a lot of shaping, but I don't think it's going to be long before we're starting to see really professional things come out, like this photograph, like the speeches, and things that have been written.
Charlotte, thanks for your call, though. It's good to hear from you. We appreciate it. I'll say again, it really is a beautiful photograph, and it's heartbreaking, actually.
It's very
that it was not
painterly,
taken.
yeah.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah.
I mean,
the lighting is pretty striking.
Just perfect.
The looks on the faces, everything.
By the way, MB on YouTube has a good point. Jim, maybe your daughter had an opinion on AI. Yeah, but you don't call my personal phone to voice your opinion. get the point there. But thank you, MB. I appreciate it. We're done.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Tune in tomorrow for Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey, Harvard national security expert Julia Kayyem, 2 regional EPA administrators for Earth Week, and Ukrainian journalist and Boston Marathon runner Marichka Padaladko. Plus, Stephen Hammond and Susan Glisson are here to discuss reconciliation talks between Robert E. Lee's family and descendants of people enslaved by the Lee family as they meet for a public forum later this month.
That's a hell of a show there.
It's a pretty extraordinary show. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, Nicole Garcia, and Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL team, Angelica Marrero, Evelyn Brito, and Brad Lewis.
Oh, am I supposed to say something now? Oh, you're doing Greater Boston, which used to be my show tonight. Is that correct?
The show formerly known as
the
Jim Browder Show.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't, actually, but I know what you mean. What are you doing?
So actually, we'll have a preview of that conversation. I met Susan Glisson on that recent tour of the South that I talked about, and they told me about this conversation where they want the nation to understand that we can come together. We might have this vast chasm of race between us, but we can come together, especially if you see people like the Lee family and the descendants come together. I'll also speak with Alex Edelman. He's the comedian in town with his show Just For Us, a Jewish comedian who, after anti-Semitic rants against him, went to a white nationalist meeting. That's the fulcrum of
his bit?
Of his show. He talks. He walks us through that meeting. Unbelievable stuff.
Greater Boston, formerly the Jim Browder Show, starring Jared Bowen tonight. Jared will be back tomorrow. Marty's got a couple more days and she returns. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Jared Bowen.
See you tomorrow. Bye.